Welcome and to a virtual world here, and our first meeting back to virtual after being at a couple meetings together. But welcome all. The meeting will now come to order. Welcome to the September 16th, 2021 meeting of the City of Raleigh Appearance Commission. My name is Corey Bates and I'm chair of the commission. The Raleigh Appearance Commission is a public body appointed by the City Council that exercises both advisory and quasi-judicial functions. The Appearance Commission's responsibilities relate to zoning and other land use matters, as well as the visual quality and aesthetic characteristics of the city. We will consider the items in today's agenda in order which they appeared in board docs. The first two items on today's agenda are requests for design alternates from the city's Unified Development Ordinance. When hearing design alternates, the Appearance Commission sits as a quasi-judicial body and conducts an evidentiary hearing on request. That means it's like a court hearing. State law sets specific procedures and rules concerning how this commission makes its decisions. The standard the applicant must meet to be granted their request is set forth in the UDO. The commission hears and considers evidence presented at the hearing and applies the standard when making its decision. The commission must base its decision on competent material and substantial evidence presented at the hearing. Since today's meeting will be conducted remotely, in addition to the general quasi-judicial rules, today's evidentiary hearing will be conducted in accordance with the state statutes that allow for remote evidentiary hearings during the current COVID-19 state of emergency. For the convenience of those participating today, I'm going to outline how we will conduct today's remote evidentiary hearing. And first of all, the witnesses must be sworn in because of the remote format. Individuals who signed up to speak, as well as city staff participants, have already signed a written oath form, which will be reaffirmed on the record as they testify today. Our participants have also already provided written consent to today's remote meeting. We will begin with a staff presentation. A staff member from the Urban Design Center will introduce the request. Since design alternates are transportation related, a staff member from the Transportation Department is also present and available to answer any questions or give any other feedback as needed. Following staff's presentation, the applicant will then be acknowledged to present their case and witnesses. The commission will acknowledge the attorney or applicant for each case first, as the point person for the applicant. Following the applicant, anyone else who signed up to participate in support or opposition of the request will be given the opportunity to speak. The applicant will be given the opportunity for cross-examination, as well as rebuttal and a closing statement. When all testimony is complete, we'll close the evidentiary hearing, a case. Following the meeting, the commission's decision will be prepared with written findings of fact and conclusions of law. The decision will be incorporated into the meeting minutes and will be adopted at the same time the meeting minutes are adopted. Before we begin, I would like to go ahead and, since we just discussed meeting minutes, go ahead and approve the meeting minutes from the August 5th quasi-judicial hearing. If everybody's had a chance to review those, do I have a motion to approve?
I will move to approve those. It's Chris.
All right, Chris, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
Okay, we have a second from Patrice. All in favor? Need to be able to see, can raise their right hand. Any opposed? All right, thank you. All right, now we will conduct the evidentiary hearing on today's agenda. Let's see. Our first case is 6420 Capitol Boulevard. It is DA 0015-2021. And Carter Pettibone and Mensah Webb, if I could go ahead and swear you in. Carter, do you swear or affirm the testimony you'll provide today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I swear.
Thank you. And Mensah, do you swear or affirm the testimony you'll provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, I'll start with you, Carter, if you want to go ahead and present for the city.
Thank you. As you mentioned, 6420 Capitol Boulevard is the address, located just south of I-540, adjacent to Capitol Boulevard. The zoning for the property is commercial mixed use, 5 stories, parkway frontage, conditional use. The applicant is requesting a design alternate for relief from the cross access requirements of UDO section 8.3.5D between the subject property and the adjacent properties to the west. In order to permit the construction of a 336 unit apartment development located on a 16-acre site in the location of the zoning that I just described. I'm happy to answer any question. Mensa Webb with our Department of Transportation is here as well.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions from the commission or staff? Okay, being none, I will go ahead and turn it over. Applicant will now present the evidence and legal arguments in support of the request. As a reminder to the applicant, any evidence and argument must focus on the applicable standards. We'll turn over to Mark Frederick proceed with the presentation.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the Appearance Commission. This is Mark Frederick, Parker, Poe, Adams, and Bernstein, 31 Fayetteville Street, on behalf of the applicant. I'll ask that our application materials and presentation be accepted into the record. As Carter mentioned, these design alternates relate to a proposed apartment development located at 6420 Capitol Boulevard. We are requesting relief from the cross-access requirements along the southwestern portion of the site, which borders two different parcels. Next slide, please. This slide shows the site and the surrounding area for context. Our property, outlined in red, is southeast of the interchange between 540 and Capitol Boulevard. The two parcels from which we are seeking relief from the cross-access requirements are outlined in yellow. The northern parcel is a Hilton Garden Inn, and the southern parcel is currently used as a self-storage facility. Next slide, please. This is a slightly zoomed in version of the latest site plan. I will note that the eastern portion of this site is going to be subdivided and include a substreet and cross-access easement to that site. The yellow stars identify the access points to the site, 2 on Town Center Drive and 1, as I noted, to that parcel to the east. And the red box on the bottom left-hand corner of the slide is the relevant portion of the site that relates to this request. And the yellow dots represent the relevant property lines. We are requesting relief from the cross-access requirements to both parcels, but for different reasons. And ultimately, the requested design alternates are justified under the UDO standards and will present evidence on each. I'd like to call our first witness at this time. I don't know if we want to go ahead and swear in both witnesses.
I'll be happy to. If each witness could step forward and give your name and address in relationship to the case, I'll swear you in.
Carter or Corey, this is Erin. If you could let me know which names to unmute in the list, I will.
Okay. I believe Adam Pike and Caitlin Shelby.
That's correct.
Afternoon, this is Adam Pike with the McAdams Company. 608 Chapanook Road.
Adam, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I swear.
Thank you.
And this is Caitlin Shelby with Wood Partners. Address is 1414 Raleigh Road in Chapel Hill.
Thank you, Caitlin. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I swear.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pike, could you please state your education and experience for the commission?
Yes, I'm a graduate of NC State University. Have been practicing civil engineering for 16 years and 15 years specifically on site development.
Thank you. I'd like to now tender Adam Pike as an expert in civil engineering and site design. Mr. Pike, what is your role in this project?
I am the civil engineering project manager for the associated apartment project.
Next slide, please. And Mr. Pike, could you please explain why we are unable to provide cross-access to the hotel property?
Yes, to start with the hotel property, there's various challenges in place. The first one is an intermittent buffered stream that would require crossing to reach said property. Another element in place is tree conservation area that we are setting aside to meet the necessary requirements with the UDO, with a good stand of trees present. And the last one is a future NCDOT project that will have a flyover interchange for the associated Capitol Boulevard 540 interchange, where we have coordinated with DOT and have set aside the land so that that space would be available for the connection.
Next slide, please. Can you please explain the reasoning for not providing the cross-access to the storage center property?
Yes. So the connection location for this property would be involving an interference with an existing loading dock and just non-complementary vehicle uses that could create a condition that would be unsafe as far as with personal owned vehicles and tractor trailers. We do not feel like this would be appropriate for the two uses.
Next slide, please. This slide shows the that loading dock at the storage facility, just to illustrate the reasoning why the cross-access the cross-access relief is being requested here. Mr. Pike, in your expert opinion, do the proposed site plans provide ample pedestrian and vehicular connectivity?
I do. We have 2 connection points and also connectivity to Town Center Drive, so to provide adequate use for these buildings.
And have you ensured that the proposed design does not increase congestion or compromise safety?
We have.
And do the proposed plans conflict with any approved or built roadway projects?
They do not.
Okay, next slide, please. Okay, I'd like to just quickly summarize the evidence on each element for the findings here. The intent of Article 8.3.5D is to provide a well-connected and safe street network. You've heard uncontroverted expert testimony that the plans as proposed provide that well-connected and safe street network. The expert testimony you heard on the second element was direct. The alternate will not increase congestion or compromise safety. Mr. Pike testified that the plans provide a well-connected and safe street network without the cross-access to the 2 parcels to the southwest. If anything, the proposed alternate is the safer option because with respect to the self-storage facility, it will prevent potentially dangerous interactions between vehicles and pedestrians from the proposed multifamily development. And again, the expert testimony was direct on the third element. The requested alternates do not conflict with any approved or built roadway projects. And finally, the design alternates are reasonable for 3 of the 4 possible reasons in the 4th element. The existing physical environment around that northern property, the hotel property, prevents cross-access to that property. This includes existing streams, wetlands, and proposed tree conservation area. The plans already provide meaningful connectivity. Again, the 2 access points to Town Center Drive, including the one in close proximity to the area where we are seeking relief. And the plans also provide for cross-access to the new parcel that is being created at the eastern side of the project. And finally, compliance is not compatible with the adjacent storage use, in particular with the tractor trailer loading docks that are directly adjacent to our site. In summary, we've presented competent material and substantial evidence to meet each of the design alternate elements. We respectfully request that the commission approve our design alternates, and we are on the line to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Does the commission have any questions for the applicant at this time?
I have one. If we could go back to the site plan that showed the storage facility. If that wasn't a storage facility and it was something that made sense to connect to, where on your site plan would it make sense to provide that connection?
I would say right near what we have cited as the dumpster or the compactor location. There's some parking spaces just to the west of it. So it probably have the best and adequate grade condition to make the connection.
Would that be kind of on access with that drive aisle, the roadway coming down from the top of the screen?
I'm not following exactly. Could you repeat?
I'm just wondering if that is following the path of that roadway, the driveway, the drive aisle that comes from the top of the plan, kind of down to that parking lot on the south end.
I
can't
do
point,
believe.
so.
Yeah, understood. I think that's the case, if I'm following correctly. They would be running parallel to the service drive. That's what you're asking.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for the applicant at this time? Being none, I do not see that there.
I just had one quick question, sorry. I'm just thinking of grading, and could you just walk us through what the grading looks like at that property line behind the garages, the 6 unit and the 6 unit, garage 2, garage 1, as you move from the riparian edge to the town center drive?
So the grading is more or less, there's a couple feet difference between the property line on the proposed multifamily project and the existing storage facility. And as you head further west, as we encroach onto the intermittent buffered stream, grade starts falling at between 10 to 13% near that corner. We have a retaining wall at the northern part of that buffer to or provide necessary restraint from the grades in that corner. So it more or less goes from a flatter condition to a steep slope condition as you head from plan east to plan west.
Okay, so generally there's not a big grade change at the property line anywhere until you get to the riparian area where that wall is.
Yes, more or less where the existing wet pond is a good transition point where you have sulfur grades, this steeper condition.
Okay. And the wet pond is basically directly south of the stream and riparian area?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? I'm going a little bit out of order here, but I understand that there are no opponents signed up to speak in this matter. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so being none, I will give it back to the applicant, see if there's anything further, any closing statements you'd like to add before we close the evidentiary hearing.
No, that was everything we had. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Staff, anything further to add?
No, nothing for me.
Okay, and does the board have any other questions to the applicant or staff before we close? All right, being none, I'll close the evidentiary hearing for board deliberations. Any thoughts, comments? I'll just say that so we have, we've heard the 4 findings. In my opinion, so number 1 is the approved design alternate is consistent with the intent of the sections 8.3.2, 8.3.4, 8.3.5, which is basically to provide a well-connected and safe street network, which I believe that they have done. The approved number 2 is the approved design alternate does not increase congestion or compromise safety. Their response was that the request design alternate will not increase congestion or compromise safety. The proposed development provides ample connectivity according to their expert witness. And number 3, the approved design alternate does not conflict with any approved or built or roadway construction, which it does not conflict. And then the design alternate is deemed reasonable due to one of the A, B, C, or D, which they went through 3 of the 4 findings. They only are required to have 1. The existing physical environment makes compliance with the requirement to provide a cross access infeasible, which I think they discussed. I think with the stream buffer on the north side, the tree conservation, the 2 uses that are not similar, I don't know that the connectivity would be meaningful or required. So I'm open to any other thoughts, comments.
Yeah, I think it looks like there's a little bit of a forested buffer between the 2 properties. And I would think that would be useful to maintain as much as possible rather than breaking that up, just to provide some buffer from the residential to the storage area.
Agreed.
I agree with both of you guys. I don't see any issues with the request.
Thank you.
Yeah, agreed. Particularly with the stream and the tree conservation area and what they would be connecting to on that south parcel.
Yeah, I don't see any good in connecting to either of those with the current use, or even if you try and imagine a future use, it's pretty convoluted to think that there would ever be a good reason to connect those in that way. So I'd make a motion to approve this design alternate.
I'll second that.
So we have a first from Adam, a second from Chris. Staff, do we have someone from the city who can help with a roll call vote?
Yes, Janine Thiessen is clerk. She'll call the roll.
Thank you. I think we're ready to do that.
Commissioner Bates, how do you vote?
Yes, approve.
Commissioner Beach?
I motion yes to approve.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Am I on? Can you hear me? Okay. Yes. Yes.
Is that, Commissioner Eberly?
Yes, vote to approve.
Commissioner Gaskins?
Yes.
Commissioner Gilmore,
I vote to approve.
Commissioner Hogan,
Approve.
Commissioner Mason,
Approve.
Commissioner Parker,
Approve.
Commissioner Roberts.
Vote to approve.
Commissioner Tuttle,
Yes, to approve.
and Commissioner Walters.
Approve.
Not that you need it, but did you get Candace as well?
I jumped on right at 4:30.
Oh, I'm sorry, didn't see you.
No, that's okay.
Commissioner Andre,
Approve.
thank you.
Yes, approve. Thank you, Catherine.
And same here. This is Jake Levitas. So joining a minute late. Also vote to approve. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so that is unanimous. We appreciate you all coming back. We apologize for the 2-week delay, but glad we were able to get you through today. So we'll move right on to case hearing number 2. It is DA 0016-2021. It is 2300 Atlantic Avenue, 1235 Wicker Drive, and 2400 Alwyn Court. I will swear in staff. I believe Kevin Kidd from Transportation. Is that correct? And Carter, we already have you. Kevin, are you online?
I am.
All right. Kevin, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Carter, would you like to start this from the staff?
Sure. Address properties, 2300 Atlantic Avenue, 1235 Wicker Drive, and 2400 Alwyn Court. The applicants request the following design alternates. Number 1, design alternate from relief from the following street cross-section requirements for Atlantic Avenue. An avenue and 4-lane divided street as set forth in section 8.5.6B of the Unified Development Ordinance and section 3.2.4B of the Raleigh Street Design Manual to replace the required 7.5-foot bike lane with a 10-foot multi-use path, a 3-foot design alternate to the required 38-foot wide half section back of curb to back of curb that results in a half section back of curb to back of curb of 35 feet, a 5-foot design alternate to the required 7.5-foot bike lane that results in a 2.5-foot curb gutter width, and a 4-foot design alternate to the required 6-foot sidewalk resulting in a 10-foot multi-use path. The second request is a 147-foot design alternate to UDO section 8.3.5C3 and Raleigh Street Design Manual section 9.5.2C, which require driveways accessing up to 80-foot wide street rights of way be spaced at least 200 feet apart, center line to center line, in order to construct a driveway 53 feet apart, center line to center line, from a driveway located on the adjacent parcel to the north, in order to develop a 135,716 square foot mixed use development on a 12.58 acre site. So an IX3 and IX3 parking limited, located at the addresses that I mentioned. The zoning for the property, as I mentioned before, just give you some idea where it's located. Here's the aerial and the zoning for the property. I'm happy to answer any questions. Kevin Kidd with the Department of Transportation is here as well.
Thank you, Carter. Kevin, do you have anything to add at this time?
Not at this time, but I will be here for any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the commission at this time for staff? Kevin or Carter, do you know if this has been presented to the BPAC? Just for discussing the bike lanes or multi-use paths?
I can answer. We have involved, I'm not 100% sure if the DPAC's been involved, but we have involved Paul Black with the city of Raleigh in these discussions we had a few different meetings with the developer team to go over this exactly as it is here.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the applicant will now present evidence and legal arguments in support of the request. As a reminder, the applicant, any evidence and argument must focus on applicable standards. Ms. Maddox, proceed with your presentation when you are ready. And if you have any witnesses, I'm happy to swear them in as well.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. My name is Isabel Maddox, PO Box 946, Raleigh 27602. I'm here today with Ken Thompson, landscape architect. You could swear us both in if you want to now.
Great. Ken, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. You need my address as well, correct?
Yeah, I do need your address.
510 South Wilmington, Raleigh, North Carolina, 27601.
Thank you.
First, I'd like to ask that the application materials and exhibits be admitted to the record. And then I'll tell you just generally about the two requests that we're making today. If you'll go to the next slide, please, Carter. That's the site plan, which just gives a general view. Oh, God, I lost my screen. And then go to the next plan, please. Next slide, please. That's an aerial photo, and you can see the access, the driveway on sort of the left-hand side. And go one more slide, please. And then this tells you about the alternative street section. So what we're asking for is basically two requests. One is on driveway spacing. If you'll go to the prior slide, you can see on the bottom of that slide, there is a place where there's an existing driveway, which is going to be closed. And then at the top on the left, you'll see where there's an existing driveway that's going to be maintained in that location. However, that is going to be widened, improved, and the turning radius increased there. The problem with this, leaving it there is it's too close from a spacing standpoint to the driveway on the adjacent property, just to the immediate north, which is an industrial use, and we don't think it's really appropriate to share a driveway there. So that's the driveway spacing request. I'm going to let Ken Thompson tell you more about it in just a minute. Then go to the next slide, please. The other request we're making today is to propose an alternative street section. This graphic here shows on one column what the existing requirements for a 4-lane divided street section would call for, and then we show you what we are proposing in the right-hand side. And again, I'm going to let Ken go into more detail about that. First, I wanted to go through the findings, and to avoid the choppiness of the back and forth, I'm going to go through them and sort of summarize how we meet those. And I'm going to let then Ken confirm those things and add a little more color to the ones that are really pertinent here. And I'm going to be talking about this. There's two sets of standards. There's a lot of overlap in those, and to save time, I'm just going to kind of go through the standards one time for both these requests, and I'll tell you when I'm talking about either the spacing request or the alternative driveway request. So the first standard is that the approved design is consistent with the intent of the UDO sections, and the intent is to provide a safe, efficient, convenient vehicular and pedestrian access and to lessen traffic congestion. And we believe that as to the driveway spacing, we feel like we're moving one access point. So we think that improves the congestion situation as well as the safety situation. We're leaving another one exactly where it is. So we're not going to make congestion worse. We're not going to make safety worse. In fact, we're going to improve it because we are improving that access point by widening it and improving the turning radius. The next standard is the approved design alternative does not increase congestion or safety. Again, we've just talked about both of those things. We feel like that as to the spacing requirement, we're closing off one access point and therefore reducing the access on Atlantic Avenue. We feel like that improves the safety situation. We don't think keeping the one existing access point makes congestion or safety worse. As far as the alternate road section, again, we feel like this section will actually work better than what is there now and will not increase congestion or compromise safety. The next standard is the approved design alternate does not conflict with an approved roadway construction plan by the city, and we do not believe that it does. The next standard is a design alternate is deemed reasonable due to one or more of the following, and I think the first one is compliance is impossible because of the limited amount of frontage, and that is a factor for the alternate. We are limited in our amount of space because of the adaptive reuse of these buildings that we're developing. We don't have complete flexibility on this site, and so by using an alternative road section, that allows us to fit in all the requirements in a little bit less space. So I think that standard does apply to the alternative street section requirement. On the second one of those possibilities, compliance would not meaningfully improve connectivity, and I don't think it would by on the driveway spacing. We are leaving one of those access points exactly where it is. We're removing another. We don't think it will affect connectivity, and we don't think the alternative roadway section will affect connectivity either. And compatibility with adjacent uses, we do not think a shared access is appropriate with the industrial use to the immediate north. And so for the spacing request, we believe that factor is relevant. Moving on to the set of standards from the Raleigh Street Design Manual. The intent is, I think the intent segments are the same. We've already talked about that. Congestion and compromised safety, we've talked about that. Maintenance responsibilities. In fact, we think the alternative street design may lessen the street maintenance responsibilities for the city because there'll be a little bit less right-of-way area. Has this design alternate been designed and certified by a professional engineer? Yes, Stewart Engineering has designed these alternates, and the next standard is the approved design alternate will not adversely impact stormwater collection and conveyance. And again, we think it will not. Neither of the design alternates will affect stormwater conveyance. And let's see, finally, well, we've gone through the standard about the design alternate is reasonable for one or more of the following. We hit, I think, 3 of those alternatives. So we do believe I'm going to get Ken to go into detail about what you're really interested to hear. Ken, will you tell us about both of these requests in more detail, please?
I certainly will. Good afternoon, everyone. Carter, if we could advance to the site plan, I'll just focus on the last 4 slides. Just to give everybody a little background, if we could go back to site plan. So this is a reuse project. All 4 buildings are out there existing right there. They have industrial uses in them or wholesale. The idea is to make a Doc 1053 2.0, but better. And so that's part of the reason for our request along Atlantic Avenue. I'll start with the road section. If we could advance that to Carter. Thank you. We are dedicating the required right-of-way width, which is 154 feet. So we're doing an additional right-of-way dedication of 14 feet to provide our 1/2 of that. Our request is in the reduction of the back-to-back the curb. I'm sure everybody's familiar with this corridor and this site as you come down Atlantic Avenue and you're heading northbound. Currently, there are no sidewalks. There's a lot of industrial buildings real close together. This site in particular is actually below Atlantic Avenue significantly, especially at the at Wicker Street. intersection, which is that's the closest driveway we closed because that was about a 30% slope. And the idea with our section is to take the bike lane out of the widening, the back-to-back curb, and move that up to adjacent to the sidewalk. And then that would be carried, hopefully, as the other properties to the north develop, carried throughout down to the greenway at Crabtree Creek. So as you can see, we increased the sidewalk in our graphic there from 6 to 10 foot, and I called it a multi-purpose, so it would be an asphalt lane. And then the bike lane has been reduced, bike lane / gutter has been reduced from 7.5 to 2.5 feet. And we think this will be better. I don't know if any of your bike riders have ridden along this corridor, even on a Saturday. It's a little scary to ride along there. We can move to the driveway separation next. So as I mentioned, we closed the driveway to the south where it says existing driveway removed. We are adding one northbound lane. Excuse me. And we've increased the radii on the driveway, the existing driveway. Right now, they're both about 3 and 5 foot radii, and we've increased them up to at least 15 feet. They might even get a little larger as we go through SPR. We have proposed a cross access to the property to the north. Excuse me. And we have some pedestrian connections, which you can see. They show you the grade difference. So even at our existing, or the one that we're improving, the grade on the slope there is already about 10%. So for us to add a driveway 200 feet to the south, that driveway slope would be about 25%, 20 or 25%. And obviously, being in the middle of the site, there'd be no room for any stacking. So that is part of our request. You can see we've extended that driveway into the site. There's plenty of room for stacking. We don't feel there'll be any conflict for people turning into the site with the existing driveway to the north, because people coming into the site will be using that new lane that we're building that ends at our existing driveway. So there won't be any conflicts with the people pulling out of the adjacent driveway. You're already committed to turning into this property. And again, the driveway shown, the parking lot shown here is existing. We're just, improving it. So, there really isn't, these redevelopments in the urban core are, hard sometimes to meet all the standards, especially in this where it's a reuse and we're not demolishing the buildings. So we feel that what we're proposing here today, meets the intent of the street design. And I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. I understand that there are no other participants in support of this. Is that correct?
That's correct as far as I know.
And there's no other, okay. And there's no other opponents signed up as well?
Nobody else.
Okay, thank you. So I will go ahead and turn it back to you, Ms. Maddox, for any closing statements if needed.
I don't have much. I think we have told you that we meet the various UDO and Raleigh Street Design Manual standards. We think this does meet the intent. We do not think it adds to congestion. We do not think it compromises safety. In fact, we think it improves safety. And we feel like it meets the other standards, and think that, it's sort of an innovative plan with this new street section to address an adaptive use project, which in a part of town that used to be purely industrial, and now we've got some kind of neat mixed use projects coming. This is one of them, and we're excited about it. And we certainly are available for any questions. We do believe we have submitted competent material and substantial evidence that satisfy your standard, and ask for your positive approval of this request. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further from the staff?
Not at this time, but I'm certainly available if any questions arise in deliberation.
Thank you. All
Nothing
right.
for me.
Thank you, Carter. Any questions from the commission for the applicant?
Yeah, this is Chris. First of all, thank you for the presentation. And as a bike rider, is there any chance you would extend this path all the way down past Hodges to the Greenway? No, but seriously, two questions. Are there any plans to put in multi-use paths either north or south of this property that would join up with this one? And then the other question that I've got, if I'm understanding the site plan correctly, as Atlantic Avenue gets developed, does this section along the frontage of the property become basically a 5-lane? So you've got the 4 lanes for traffic and then the extra lane that you're building in for a deceleration lane?
Yeah.
I believe that question's to staff, or is that to Ms. Maddox?
It was to Miss Maddox.
And I would kick it to Ken Thompson.
Okay.
So if Carter, if you could go back to the street section. So this is a 4-lane divided. So there's supposed to be an ultimate build out once, you know, the entire corridor is developed. There would be a planter island with 2 northbound, 2 southbound lanes. So the new lane we're building would be, as the properties north of us develop, you know, would be provided. Connection to the Greenway. Okay. Yeah, connection to the Greenway is a conversation that we had with staff, with Paul Black and Kevin and Bradley and everyone. And the idea was to, you know, yes, that it would be great if this could extend farther, but, you know, we don't have control of the properties north of us at this point. Yes.
That's right. Okay, thanks. I was misunderstanding that extra lane that you were putting in. And then maybe the second part could be answered by Kevin. Do you know if there are plans for continuing that multi-use path all the way up to the Greenway and beyond?
Very good question. So what we will do as subsequent properties redevelop, we'll certainly make note of this multi-use path. Staff has made effort to look to ask developers more of these. So certainly this will set a path forward where we'll look to keep that going down the section.
Great, thank you.
Kevin, while we've got you, do you feel like there's any downside to adding the deceleration lane and having that push this multi-use path into sites that would in the north if you were going to continue it? Or you know, it's kind of like, I really like that added lane just for safety, but that does certainly push the multi-use path over into the sites. And if it was going to extend north, then they would be, at least for the next property north, they would have to kind of connect further into their site. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, good question. So, excuse me, a lot of the focus here was seeing if we could get the cyclist off the section and looking at more of the long range views of the city and some of our upcoming text changes. This fits somewhat with that model where we're looking to separate pedestrians and cyclists, maybe outside the curb line. And what we have here, we do have a ramp for cyclists who are in the street to get up on the ramp. So the future cross section text change, that's not in place, but that's what I'm referring to currently. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So I guess would you imagine that added lane continuing north in your ideal situation and the multi-use path in a similar alignment all the way down to Crabtree?
So this section of Atlantic is a 4-lane divided. We currently have 4 lanes there. There aren't any plans to add the center section or a median at this time, but we would look to continue the multi-use path just to have that continuous travel lane where cyclists, pedestrians, however, aren't coming back and forth in a weave. So yes, but it would be a redevelopment process. I'm not aware of any city projects to maintain that at this time. There are some elements of grade along this frontage on Atlantic. I think we're all familiar with it, where you're coming down a downgrade as you're looking here. There's also you've got frontage where the grade really gets steep. I think this helps address some of that, where we're not widening as much. We're narrowing that section down, and we've got that multi-use path. So staff did not have any immediate concerns with what they proposed on this plan as related to the multi-use.
This is Corey. So I guess the question that I was kind of understanding is Adam was asking it, and what my question is adding this decel lane, kind of this third lane, right, as a deceleration lane. Is there a certain size of development that you need that, or will it go back to, for in the future, these smaller lots to the north, would they just maintain a 4-lane street section, and that way the multi-use path could be slid out farther, or would they need a decel lane as well, or would you continue that third lane? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And we would look at it case by case. And this frontage is 4-lane. A lot of the properties are up close to the frontage. This here, it would be tough to envision getting an extra lane, but the current vision is to keep it moving. But I can't speak to what we do as we're getting closer to intersections, how we're transitioning out of that. But the current thought going down this corridor is a model much like you see in front of you now. So we are envisioning some kind of consistency. I can't remember what the next signalized intersection down is, but when you get to those points, maybe there's some variables. But I don't see us straying. So, for example, if the property next door came in that's immediately adjacent, we would look to implement something similar on that frontage. So if the concern of the commission, are we going to have a section of Atlantic that's jogging in and out, staff certainly wants to avoid that, while also taking into account all safety elements of this. So I hope that better explains the answer of staff.
Thank you.
Yeah, which is where I think I was misunderstanding to begin with. But if they're doing half of that right-of-way section, that 104-foot cross-section of the street, that takes you to the backside, plus a little more, plus the planting strip past that multi-use path. So in the future, as those properties to the north are developed, they'd have to do the same thing. So you'd end up with a similar size right-of-way dedication.
Yeah, that's the way I would view it. There are some current text changes that are in review and ongoing and moving along towards a process where maybe they would culminate with a vote one way or the other. It does adjust the right-of-way to some degree by a few different feet. And so I can't see totally what direction that's going, on how many feet that is, et cetera. But I think what I want to stress is that we're looking at a very similar section with that kind of laneage going down. And we would take every site into account what we're doing. But I hope the takeaway here is that generally speaking, we're looking at this same section along the frontage with a 10-foot multi-use path and go from there. In the text change, could there be some variation in a few feet here or there in the right of way? Maybe it's wider, for example? Sure. Does that give more leeway in reducing easements? Those kind of things, maybe. But I think that's the best response I can give at this time.
Thanks, Kevin. Kevin, one more question for you. I think it's difficult, if not impossible, to avoid the driveway spacing issue. Do you have any concern with that?
We haven't developed any comments as related to that. I think Mr. Thompson spoke to some of the elements on why they were at that point, but I don't really have any comments prepared as to that.
Well, could I ask just one follow-up on that? If that cross-access was there and the industrial property to the north were to be redeveloped as something else, is there anything to avoid a by right situation where that redevelopment would get to have that driveway out onto Atlantic? because that cross access is there, can you say you have to use the cross access and you can't use the driveway to Atlantic?
Excellent question. So we would look at that. And as the commission likely knows, the cross-access agreement is reciprocal, meaning that the adjacent development would have to adhere to it and connect. That is certainly a discussion we'd look to have. There'd be different accountability factors that we would look at. What type of vehicle, how's the stem length, those kind of things. But certainly a discussion we would have looking into if there's a way to address these driveways or not. So I hope that answers, but it would certainly be a discussion. We'd look, in summary, we'd look at the types of vehicles. We'd look at stem length, which is evident here, and go from there. But we would definitely require the connection between the two and have this discussion on that driveway as well.
Got a question for the applicant. Is there, I see the on-ramp from the bike lane to the south onto the multi-use path. On the north end, any kind of infrastructure around return back to the bike lane? And if they're not, is that due to that driveway placement?
I'll say what I know, but Kevin will have to correct me on Ironworks or make sure I'm correct on what I state for Ironworks. So that bike lane that's shown coming from the south is on the approved plan for Ironworks, so I believe in our discussions. And the bike lane is not designated to go on any of the parcels to the north currently, unless Paul Black has a plan under consideration. I don't recall discussing. So
just to make it clear, Ironworks is to the south.
Sorry, yeah, I apologize. Yeah, Ironworks is to the south. It's the same developer. It's if you drove by there, it's where waste management used to be. The buildings are all been stripped, and it's currently under construction. So, yeah, they in their approval there was the bike lane was on Atlantic Avenue, and the idea here was to bring it off of Atlantic at this point, and then as the future properties in the north develop, we would keep bikes and pedestrians from the greenway up on the backside of the sidewalk. So since there is not a bike lane to go back down to on the north of our site, we have not shown a ramp to get back out at this point.
Okay, thank you. And I guess a follow-up question for Kevin, then I guess that's the city's preferred versus building a ramp to nowhere.
As far as on the south side of Wicker Drive, why we don't have a ramp there for the bike access?
I just mean building future infrastructure towards what the required bike lane to the north and when that's developed versus continuing the multi-use path.
Can we zoom into that section a little bit?
Please.
Is that readable? There we go. And pan down just a little bit. So I think once you cross, if we can pan down.
Other way.
Once you cross that driveway right there, I mean, it seems to me there's an arrow going to it that, yeah, what would staff prefer there? Would they prefer a curb, basically I don't know, you don't really call it a curb cut, but a little path just to the property line? Is that whatever that is, that 5 feet or whatever that is to do it now or to wait or not do it?
Excellent question. And at the SPR phase or site permitting review phase, we would definitely get into that. Could you pan, and I can give you an example of something we could do here. Could you pan more towards the bottom of the page so we can see how folks are getting on to the multi-use path? Right. So there's a couple of different options. One of them is this. We could talk with Paul Black's team being the experts here, and we rely a lot on their thoughts. Something like this, we could look at as our access points from the driveway, but we certainly do not want to put another ramp that looks like that multi-use path is projecting in any fashion. So we concur with not showing a ramp on the other side of the driveway and working through some of these elements with getting the cyclist off the multi-use path and where they need to go in Atlantic and come back around. But there's a couple of different options. I'm describing that to your satisfaction.
You're muted.
we go. One more follow-up question. That was super helpful. Was an alternative considered where, the bike lane comes inside of the deceleration lane? We've done that a couple other places in the city.
We have, I don't know that we have a lot of those on this type of topology with the amount of vehicles we're carrying through here currently with Atlantic, and I don't have those numbers for you precisely, but Atlantic Avenue being a heavy corridor of travel from downtown north. But maybe you'll see some of those on the 2-lane divided. For example, we have sections of town, St. Albans, for example, where we're going to the buffered bike lane approach, where that's a 2-lane avenue divided, where this is a 4-lane. So we look at those types of things on that corridor. I don't want to get too much in the weeds if the commission's okay with that. I think Paul Black would be a great one to ask some of these questions. I know he's not here today, but I don't recall anywhere we've done something like that on 4-lane divided, just from memory.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commission before we close evidentiary hearing? Being none, I'm going to go ahead and close evidentiary hearing and for board deliberations. Would somebody like to go ahead and give some thoughts?
Yeah, I'll just say that I don't have an issue with either one of these requests. And if anybody's ever tried to ride their bike down Atlantic Ave, getting the bike off the road would be my first priority. So I would be in favor to approve both of these requests.
I'd agree with Chris.
Yep, I agree with that.
Yeah, so definitely. I've ridden on this road, and this is like the most dangerous section of this road, and we're planning lots of people to be on and around here. So that getting folks off of Atlantic, I think, is really important. I'm struggling with this deceleration lane because it's forcing the bikers to go further off the road, and there's no real promise that they're not going to, at the end of this property, have to come right back over onto the road, because this deceleration lane is not a part of the Atlantic Avenue cross section. But it sounds like the city is wanting to extend that as much as they can. I don't know that they can, but generally, I'm excited that it looks the way it does.
Well, and I think with where they're looking at their half of that 104-foot right-of-way to the backside of that multi-use path, I think as those properties to the north get developed, you won't have that condition anymore. I think it'll all start to align eventually as things get developed.
Yeah, and it sounds like certainly the multi-use path will continue, whether it jogs a little bit because of that deceleration lane. Maybe that's not that big of a deal.
Well, and I think in the future that deceleration lane just becomes part of the 4-lane divided cross section. So even though it'll be 5 now, eventually when they do that 4-lane divided cross section with the planter in the middle, then it goes back to 4 lanes.
Yeah, and the sidewalk will continue to the north regardless. So it won't feel quite as much of a hard stop. So most people would probably make that a nice connection in some fashion.
Yeah.
And I do agree with your comment, Adam, about when that property to the north gets redeveloped, not allowing them to go have a driveway out onto Atlantic and needing to use that cross access.
Yeah, I don't know if they can do that because when this development asks that owner, basically they both have to agree, right? Anyway.
No, I think they have a right to use that driveway.
The one out on Atlantic.
Well, the cross access.
Oh, okay.
Because they'll be required to provide an easement that gets out there.
I thought they both had to agree. Yeah, either way, it's all good.
Yep.
All right. I tend to agree. I think, so we have two requests, the driveway spacing, the alternative street section. You know, I believe that the applicant has, you know, both have similar you know, sections in the code that need to be met with I believe that all these have, they've gone through and with quite a bit of detail, discussing about the improved connectivity, the improved safety, the encouragement of safer for pedestrians with the one less curb cut there. Sounds like city staff is is in support of this one as well. I believe that they've met the requirements. So with that, I would move to approve as noted and brought before us today.
I'll second that. Chris Roberts.
With a second, is there any other further discussion? All right, if I could ask Ms. Eason to help me out one more time and take a roll call vote, that would be very helpful.
Commissioner Andre,
Approve.
Commissioner Bates,
Approved.
Commissioner Beach,
Approve.
Commissioner Everly.
She may have stepped away.
I believe she had to step out.
Commissioner Gaskin,
Yes.
Gilmore,
Approve.
Commissioner Hogan,
Approved.
Commissioner Levitas,
Approve.
Commissioner Mason,
Approve.
Commissioner Parker,
Approve.
Commissioner Roberts,
Approve.
Commissioner Tuttle,
Approve.
Commissioner Walters.
Approve.
Thank you very much for that, Ms. Eason. So with that, it is unanimous approval. And again, I want to apologize from the commission that we held this up a couple weeks, but glad we were able to get this through today. So thank you very much for that. And with that, I will go ahead and close the design alternate portion of our meeting, and we will open the administrative alternate portion of our meeting. We have four or five. We have five, one return from last meeting, which we'll get to first, and then do the other four. And if we can, we are not required to have the 8 like we normally would. So there may be a couple people jumping off here. We do need 5 votes for these reviews. So with that being said, I'd like to go ahead and ask Carter if you'd like to go ahead and briefly explain to participants the administrative alternate portion of tonight's meeting.
Thank you. Yes, it'll be quite different than the design alternate portion. For each of these cases, a city staff member, myself, will provide a brief introduction and presentation. Then the applicant will be acknowledged to present their case in up to 10 minutes to do so. Speakers are asked to provide their name and address for the record. Following the presentation, the commission members will be given an opportunity to ask questions of the applicant and staff. The commission will then hear from any other participants who would like to speak on the request. Just to let you know, for all 5, we've not received any signups to speak from the public. And then when all comments from the applicant staff and other participants are complete, the chair will bring that item back to the table for deliberation. And then you'll go over the findings of fact in the applicable section of the UDO. And then following that, the commission chair will ask for a motion, which will take the form of a recommendation to the planning director for action on the request. The motion can be a recommendation for approval or with conditions or denial. The commission may also vote to defer the case to the next regular meeting. This is typically in order to receive additional information. And then the commission will vote on the request.
Thank you very much. Okay, and we will now go ahead and call the cases in order in which they appear on the agenda. The first case is AAD-11-21, 7100 Falls of Neuse Road, which was continued from the August 19th meeting. So a lot of you will remember this one. And I will go ahead and ask the applicant if they would like to go ahead, or actually, Carter, if you'd like to go ahead and give a quick rundown from staff presentation.
Sure. Just start with the intent. It's to provide a range of building placement that strengthens the street edge along the right of way, establishing a sense of enclosure by providing spatial definition adjacent to the street. This building edge can be supplemented by architectural features, elements, and certain tree plantings aligned with a formal rhythm. The harmonious placement of buildings to establish street edge is the principal means by which the character of an area or district is defined, and the build-to range is established to accommodate some flexibility in specific site design while maintaining the street edge. The findings must meet the intent of the build-to regulations, must conform with the comprehensive plan and adopted city plans. It must not substantially negatively alter the character defining street wall or establish a build-to pattern that is not harmonious with the existing built content. The change in percentage of building that occupies the build-to area or increased setback does not negatively impact pedestrian access, comfort, or safety. And any site area that would have otherwise been occupied buildings is converted to an outdoor amenity area for the code. As Corey mentioned, this was before you at the last meeting. I'm sorry, at the second August meeting. It was continued until this meeting in order for the applicant to address the concerns about the composition of the proposed amenity areas along both the streets. The commissioner's recommendations included extending the retaining wall and plantings along Harps Mill Road, and including an outdoor seating area on top of the retaining wall for the use of the building occupants adjacent to the building corner. And 2, extending canopy, taller understory trees on Harps Mill and Falls of Neuse to occupy the entire length of the amenity area. And I'm going to hand it over to the applicant unless you have any questions for me.
Any questions from the commission for staff at this time?
And Aaron, if you could unmute the folks for this case, that'd be great.
So the applicant, we have Danielle Hammond, Katie Martin, Joe Wagner, Mike Winter, and Keith Horton. And we'll go ahead and turn over to Danielle if that's all right.
Yes,
For-
thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you and good afternoon. I will start with introducing everyone from the group, and as they speak, they can state their address for the record. I'm Danielle Hammond, civil engineer with Kimley Horn. Address of the record is 421 Fayetteville Street, Suite 200 in Raleigh, North Carolina. With me speaking today is JL Wagner with CEPI. She is the landscape architect. I have architects Mike Winter and Katie Martin with HBA, and then Keith Horton of Town Bank is present today as well to answer any questions should they arise. So I'll just do a brief recap of the project since we were in front of you guys on August 19th. So as you recall, this site is at the intersection of Falls of Neuse Road and Harps Mill Road. The existing property consists of 4 duplexes at the corner of this intersection, and the site was rezoned in late 2020 to office mixed use with parking limited frontage consistent with the surrounding uses. The proposed project consists of an approximately 15,000 square foot bank and office building with remote banking drive-through and ATM to the rear of the site and associated parking placed behind and adjacent to the building. The proposed building is located within the build-to range along both primary streets, Falls of Neuse Road and Harps Mill Road. And our administrative alternate request is for a reduction in the percentage of build-to requirement along both roads. So the areas that would otherwise be required to be occupied by building facade per the UDO will be utilized as outdoor amenity areas and enhanced landscaping to help extend the building facade. So brief recap, and ultimately the 4 comments that came out of our last hearing were: 1, to extend the retaining wall farther along Harps Mill Road frontage and add amenity atop the wall. 2, add additional trees and plantings in the open area along the Harps Mill Road frontage. 3, add additional trees and plantings along the Falls of Neuse frontage. And 4, change the ash tree species. Now I'll turn it over to JL Wagner to discuss how we've improved on the plan.
Good evening, and thanks for hearing us today. If you could go to the next slide, Danielle. So we did make the adjustments that were requested. We were able to, can you zoom into the bike area, please? We were able to go in and improve the landscaping as you all had requested. We ensured that we were extended the length, and they actually added some additional plantings adjacent to the street yard to the north and extended that up through the parking area. And then for the amenity along Harps Mill, we took into account the requests that you all had made to make this more of an amenity that is specific to the site rather than such a public area. And we relocated that seating area up to be adjacent to the corner of the building and more of a private sort of garden area above the retaining wall that was also extended per your recommendations. So it's more of a secluded area. And then also we did add additional plantings along the streetscape area between the building and this relocated amenity and the driveway entrance. So sort of building up the vegetation in there on the site itself. Both of those items we extended those plantings to be able to lend itself to the build to intent. And I will turn it over to Michael, who will go through our renderings and be able to show some additional views of those improvements in a 3D rendering. Michael?
Yeah, thank you. This is Michael Winter with HBA, 1 Columbus Center, Suite 1000, Virginia Beach, Virginia. If you go to the next slide, please. This is a view along Falls of Neuse. Shows where we're improving, adding a bus stop, but to give a sense of what the streetscape is like along Falls of Neuse. If you go to the next slide, please. This is a view looking down on the amenity area that we're providing along Falls of Neuse. This is that bicycle storage block area as well as a bike repair station. And it also shows the increased and enhanced landscaping that JL mentioned that we provided. That is an amenity area provided. It extends along the building frontage and continues on with additional plantings along Falls of Neuse. Go to the next slide. This is just a close-up view, pedestrian view, so that you can see the increased landscaping, plantings and trees that extend along Falls of Neuse that continue beyond the required frontage and amenity. Next slide. This is a view along Harps Mill. This shows the retaining wall area as well as the amenity area that was relocated to respond to staff. We extended the retaining wall down Harps Mill, located the seating area to the top of that area adjacent to the building. We increased landscaping, enhanced it with trees, plantings that extended on to the extents of the required building frontage. We also continued enhanced landscaping and smaller landscape trees along Harps Mill all the way out down to the entrance to the site along Harps Mill. Next slide. Next slide. And this is just a close-up view, pedestrian view, again, showing those enhanced landscaping in the base of the wall as well as above the wall, trees and seating area for that amenity area. one more slide. Yeah, and so this is a view looking at where we extended the retaining wall and created that amenity area that's an extension of the building edge up along the top of the retaining wall. We're also getting a good extended landscaping and plantings that we've done in this area. I believe that's it.
Yes, thank you, Mike and JL. So, Appearance Commission, this concludes our presentation in response to your comments we heard at the last hearing and are open for any questions that you guys may have.
Thank you, Ms. Hammond. Any questions for the applicant or staff from the commission at this time? Being none, I understand there's no other participants signed up to speak, so I'll go ahead and bring it back to the table for commission deliberations and findings. Any thoughts right off? You know, my first thought is, I mean, it's a lot better. I think they listened to our comments. They came back gracious to review all those and come back with a, I think, much better plan. So happy to get any other thoughts.
I agree
Corey.
particularly with that. Go ahead, Marcus.
No. After you.
I was just going to say, particularly with the amenity space moved up to the top of that retaining wall. And then I'm going to rely on our landscape friends on the plantings.
Right.
Yeah, they did everything that we requested. So seems like pretty cut and dry.
All right, let's go through the findings. The approved alternate meets the intent of the Build 2 regulations, which I believe it does. The approved alternate conforms with the comprehensive plan and adopted city plans, which I think we can find plenty of policies there. We'll come back to that. The approved alternate does not substantially negatively alter the character defining street wall or establish a Build 2 pattern that's not harmonious with the existing built context, which I believe we agree. Much better. And then the change in percentage of building that occupies the Build 2 area or increased setbacks does not negatively impact pedestrian access, comfort, or safety. It does not. And the site area that would otherwise have been occupied by buildings is converted to an outdoor amenity area, which they have done. So if we could go ahead and substantiate that with some findings, I believe they have a few here that actually reinforcing the urban pattern, LU 5.1.
The UD 4.5, improving the street environment.
UD 6.2.
UD 1.4.
Okay, with that being said, do we have any other, do we have a motion?
And just to let you know, you don't have to do the roll call vote for these. You can do it by hands.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second, Corey.
Who was that second? Was that Marcus? Marcus second. All in favor by raising your hand? Any opposed? All right, that was unanimous. Thank you very much. Appreciate you all coming back and taking our comments into consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move right on to case number 2, AAD 10-21, 320 West South Street. Our participants are Laurent de Cameron and Brett Dickinson, Ken Thompson, Rod Harner, Jake Baum, Victoria Coates, and Natalie Mason. I'll go ahead and turn this over to Carter. If you'd like to go ahead and start this one off.
Thank you. This is a request for both transparency and building massing. The intent of the transparency regulations requirements lend visual interest to street-facing building facades for both pedestrians and building occupants and minimize blank wall areas. It's not applicable to residential uses. In terms of the findings for transparency, would need to meet the intent, conform with the comprehensive plan and adopted city plans, and then have the building facade utilize other architectural treatments to create visual interest to offset the reduction in transparency. Just to give a little background, proposal of 20-story mixed-use building with an associated parking deck, a little over an acre, zone downtown mixed-use 20 stories, urban limited with a conditional use. Conditions include prohibited uses and restrictions on the development intensity. The site is located at the northwest corner of the intersection of South Street and Dawson Street. It also has frontage on West Lenore Street. Since the building type for the building is mixed use, the standard for transparency on the ground floor for each street-facing facade is a minimum of 66%. The applicant meets the minimum transparency along both South Dawson and West South Street with 83 and 88% respectively. The applicant requests an alternate for the transparency for the ground floor along South Lenore Street, where 52% is proposed. In terms of building massing, the intent is for the regulations to manage the impact of tall buildings located near the public right-of-way. Step backs are intended to provide access to light and air at street level, mitigate wind impacts, and produce a consistent street wall, and visually reduce the perceived scale of a building to avoid a canyon effect. In terms of the findings for building massing, of course, the intent must be met of the building massing regulations, conformity with the comprehensive plan and adopted city plans. If the approved alternate uses a change in building materials to mimic a change in wall plane, the most substantial and durable materials are to be located at the bottom floors of the building. If the approved alternate proposes a building setback behind the behind the sidewalk in lieu of a required step back, resulting open space includes public amenities such as seating areas, trees, and landscaping or outdoor dining. And finally, the building contains architectural treatments for delineating the base, middle, and top of the building. I'm happy to answer any questions. We have representatives from the architecture and development team for the project here.
Any other questions for staff from the commission this time? All right, being none, we'll go ahead and turn it over to the applicant. Laurent, if you'd like to go ahead and present.
Thank you. Laurent de Commermond. I'm an architect and a principal at J. Davis, and I'm here to present our design for this project. If you can go to the next slide, Carter. As Carter mentioned, we're seeking two alternates here, so I'll go through the massing first, and then we can move on to the transparency alternate. So this massing diagram illustrates the composition of the project with the various elements of different scale and material. So starting on the west side, we're abutting a storage facility, and we have a 7-level parking deck with a pool on the roof and a residential amenity. And then moving east towards downtown, the 20-story building is actually it's comprised of 3 components itself, which is at the ground level, what is referred to as the base here, which is mostly retail and residential lobby and leasing and such. And then the 20-story tower proper, which is the dark gray tower. As you can see, it has a little retail arcade at the ground floor on South Street. And what's interesting to note also is that the skin extends beyond the roof of the 20th floor to provide screening for mechanical equipment, and also to increase the amount of step back that occurs at this top floor. The top floor has residential amenities as well as some apartments. And then lastly is what is referred to here as the middle, which is this portion of the building that starts at the second floor, which is 20 feet above the sidewalk, and then ends at the 20th floor. It has an angle on it, and so this view here in the foreground is South Street, which is probably the most pedestrian of the surrounding streets. It has it's been redone recently. It has a bike lane and is very pedestrian friendly. So on that side, we're enhancing that experience by providing a retail plaza by setting back from the property line, which can be used by all the retail tenants. Next slide, Potter. So this is the view from the northeast corner, which is catty corner from Red Hat Amphitheater. You can see the railroad tracks going across Dawson there. And those same elements I just mentioned from the last massing diagram. On this side on the North Street, it's more of a layering of facades, the facade of the parking deck that overlaps onto the facade of the tower. And then this middle portion, which turns the corner there and has balconies at the corner, which you will see in the renderings. And again, the ground level steps back, as you can see from the property line. There's substantial setback on both Dawson and Lenore. Next. So this just illustrates the outdoor amenity area. So on South Street, we set back almost 15 feet, and that's in addition to the sidewalk, which I think is already 17 feet. On Dawson Street, we're setting back 12 feet in addition to the sidewalk, which I think is already 20 feet. And then at the top, there's a step back, 26 feet at the corner, 8 feet for the remaining portion, and then 8 feet on the North Street. Next. And then this view with all the setback and step backs I just mentioned, and then a 10-foot setback on the North Street in addition to the 16-foot sidewalk. Next. This is a view from South Street, so east of Dawson. So you can see South Street with a median in the middle, the planted median. On the left would be Heritage Park. So this shows the facade, the main facade, which, as I said, starts above the ground floor, has a substantial overhang above the ground floor, and then stops at the 20th floor, and then has the step back up there, and then has balconies on either end. Next. This view is to illustrate the pedestrian experience. Part of the requirement is to increase light and air. So we believe that this design provides a lot more light and air for pedestrians by having this 12-foot setback that's 20 foot high. This would be the residential entrance at Lenore and Dawson. And you can see the corner balconies that begin at the second floor and extend up. Next. And this is the retail plaza on South Street. So to the left, the storefront is actually in the parking structure. So there will be some space there available for retail tenants as well as residential amenities. And then we're creating this retail plaza, which connects to this retail arcade further down there. So again, a substantial amount of additional amenity areas, and then this illustrates the three kind of building components that are very distinct from each other. And I think that's it. One more, Carter, maybe. I think it's oh, right. So we have those elevations, and I'll go through them quickly, but this one is on South Street, and it's to illustrate that 80% of the facade is 7 stories or less. And so the tower component on South Street is very narrow, as you can see. Next. This is Dawson, and here, on the contrary, the tower is sticking up, obviously, the entire width, but you can see this middle piece that overhangs and is forward of at the 20th floor. And you can also see at the 20th floor that the skin extends, so that row of glass up there is spandrel glass for for mechanical units. Next. And then on the North Street, pretty much half the site has the 20-story tower scale, and then the other half is that 7-level parking deck, which has also an enclosed amenity area that is associated with the pool. Next. And this just is just a plan view of this amenity, outdoor amenity area that was referenced in the massing diagrams. But there's a lot of transparency along this entire yellow strip. It's pretty much all curtain wall and storefront. And then as you move to the west is more of the service areas and loading and trash and all that. So so this concludes the presentation for the massing alternate. But then I have 2 more slides for the transparency. Carter, if you want me to go through those, and then we can take questions for both alternates.
Yes, let's do it all, and then.
Okay. What's fresh in everybody's mind? So this is the elevations, the South Street and Dawson Street elevations. Both meet, actually exceed the transparency requirements, because on South Street we have actually added some storefront in the parking deck, as I mentioned. Dawson Street is pretty much all glazing, and you have all the numbers down there. And it's also interesting to know that Dawson Street is actually not required to have any transparency, which is a little bit odd, but it's not one of the primary streets. South and the north, the primary street, so it's kind of an odd situation, but obviously we have transparency there. Next slide. Lenore Street is our more problematic street. We have a 20-foot of slope from corner to corner, and it's also where that street is not as pedestrian. Across the street there's a substation, electrical substation with a big retaining wall. We have the storage facility next door, and we have this big slope. So this is where we elected to put our more service-oriented areas, trash loading, retail trash, residential trash loading, transformers on the right side there. So we could not meet the 66% transparency. We have 52, but then we did the math, and then if you add up all 3, because we get so much transparency in Dawson, the average of all 3 streets is 74%. So this does it. Am I under 10 minutes, Carter?
I think so. I haven't been timing it this time.
I'm trying to spare the Appearance Commission members from, it sounds like there's to be more after this.
There is. Thank you very much for that, for the presentation. Does the commission have any questions for the applicant or for staff this time? It's a lot to absorb for 20-story building.
I got one question.
You go ahead.
On the parking deck, what's the intended material and kind of screening?
The parking deck is a precast parking deck, and this has come up in the ASR comments. We've been going back and forth. Obviously, we have to screen the cars, and it's a precast structure, but it will have. We haven't committed to having a brick facing, but it will be precast with profile to it and a color. We just did a precast deck at Smoky Hollow on Harrington Street. That is also a precast deck, but has a lot of different textures and architectural profiles. So it's actually architectural precast with a lot more verticals than required. And so the parking deck will look like this in terms of the more square openings and vertical openings. It will not necessarily be brick, but if it's not brick, then it will be architectural precast with colors and textures. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thanks.
I have
And
a
also-
question for Carter. In the staff report, when we're looking at the setbacks, the building setbacks, it says these range approximately 10 feet deep along West Lenore, 12 to 14 along South Dawson, and 13 to 15 along South Street. And it says, while plans indicate these setbacks will contain seating areas, trees, and landscaping, it is important to mention that they are only at the first floor level. Can you expand on that comment?
Yeah, I guess what I meant to say is that the setback only exists on the first floor level, because it does have that kind of overhang. So at the ground level is where that setback is for those amenity areas.
Is that a setback or a step back?
That's a setback on the building. The step back would be, part of the building. So the step back would actually be up on the 20th floor.
It's a reverse step back.
Yeah. You have seen those before.
Any other questions for the applicant?
The only kind of clarifying question I have is, are the trees that are being, this is all just an ASR, right, Carter?
That's correct.
Yeah, so the only trees I saw were the required street trees. It's not like, it didn't appear that there was any more landscaping than the required street trees that you would have, whether you had a setback or not. I think I would just encourage, as you all move forward in these plans, to soften what is a wide swath of concrete up against the building facade with some thoughtful landscaping.
Understood.
All right, if there's no other questions, I'll bring it back to the table for commission deliberation and findings. Any thoughts at the table? I'm having a little bit of a hard time because it is early on, with a couple things. One is just not really seeing what that amenity area is. I mean, right now it's just a lot of tables shown on the ground story. What is it? There's a 10-foot on Lenore. There's 12, I think, on Dawson, and I'm just having a hard time understanding what that is and what we get. And then the whole idea of the UDO is to step back right at 7 stories or something. I mean, we're going up to 20. So have we done are there any kind of studies or wind studies, or we have any thoughts about, how this is going to affect downtown? We've had these conversations before with other projects, one being built right now, just up on the same street, up the street, across from Campbell, but just wondering what people's thoughts are with that as well.
I'll jump in on the amenity area. I like the fact that it's overhang on there. I think it creates some enclosure that is needed on a very auto-centric street there, as people are just hit the gas coming under that bridge, just to create more experience for folks that the retail space that will be there, but people who may be there of more safety. So I like it.
Yeah, I don't mind. I don't mind so much the massing that they're proposing, even though it is a giant wall architecturally. I'm not. I'll stay away from that. I just feel like that amenity area is so exposed to that busy, fast, loud road, and it sure could could use some softening and buffering with some landscape. I do see there are six proposed trees there now in the amenity area. So those are good, but just along South Dawson, it looks pretty bare and wide open.
Granted, I mean, there is another 23 feet or something, you know, to Dawson, but
yeah,
it's going to be the city street. But you know, it is, to me, I mean, without seeing a whole lot, I just kind of see it as a kind of a stark area that could use some softening and something special. And I just don't know that it's quite there with something that's special to make it unique and special for Raleigh. But I'm, you know, I'm open to suggestions. I think they could get there. I just don't. I think it's early on. So I mean, you know, the benefit of the doubt is, I mean, it's still early on. So they don't have all that figured out yet. But for this being an amenity area that is supposed to basically negate the idea that we have this big 19-story wall, I think there needs to be a little more thought put into that before I feel comfortable with it. And, you know, it's not their issue, but it's a UDO issue, is the whole base, middle, and top. You know, what makes it a top, what makes it a base. I can see the base, the top, I don't know. You know, it's really not as much their issue as it is a UDO. You know, probably need some clarity there at some point, but a 1-story flat plane at the top, you know, I don't know. Does that make it a top? It's debatable.
Corey, is there an option, maybe like we did with the last case, to ask that we get some more information and sort of defer the you know, until some further development can be done?
You know, I think we can do that, but I think we need to give them some guidance on what we'd be looking for as well. I mean, I think, you know, to be fair to the applicant.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you know, we're coming off the, you know, the previous case where we said, you know, this is what we're really looking for. This is, you know, what we believe the intent is, and they went back and responded, you know, to all of those points, and you know, I would believe that this applicant could do the same.
Yeah, look, I mean, this is a 20-story building. It's going to cost many times more than the building we just looked at. So, you know, and it's downtown. It's on a very urban corridor of the city. It's an important part of the city. So, you know, some good thought needs to happen here. And I'm sure, you know, again, I'm sure it is. I don't want to say that it's not. I just don't think we've seen it yet. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you, Corey. I mean, looking at the transparency issue, I don't have an issue with what is proposed. I think, you know, at some point you've got some of those spaces along the facade that you just don't want transparency, but with the overall, all three sides combined together, they're at 74% transparent. So I think I don't have an issue with that, but yeah, I'm struggling with the fact that we've got a 19-story tall flat wall that basically is on the property line, and the step back is intended to break that up, or the setback is intended to give a little more space along the front, the street front, which it does. But then, as Carter mentioned in his staff comments, it immediately bounces back out to that property line. I think I could probably get past it with a little more development of what happens at that ground level to make sure that it is going to be something special. It is going to be something that softens up that street. Because, yeah, you're right. You don't want it to just become kind of a concrete wasteland out there.
Well, and we're also setting a precedent. I mean, we had a lot of conversation on the one down the street, and, you know, and not to compare, but it does have a lot more undulation and tectonic going on of the building facade. Whereas this one, it's got different planes going at different curves and angles, where this is a very, very straight, and we're setting a precedence here. So we need to think about, is this what we want to see on our main corridors and everybody doing in Raleigh? I mean, it is the most efficient core. There's no doubt about it. All right. It's the simplest and most efficient way to build something. That being said, the UDO was crafted in a way for a reason, and so we need to make sure that we're following the guidance of that. And again, I think we can get there, but and then going back to the point of the transparency, yeah, I don't have any problem with that. I'm happy to make a motion and kind of get that portion out of the way if everybody feels the same way. I feel like this portion of it, I think, just needs to be developed a little bit more. We need to hear a little bit more about what the plans are.
Yeah, it seems like what we're saying is if we're gonna do something so stark and kind of not with the intent of building massing as written in the UDO, then the alternate needs to be really well done and make up for that. And it seems like highlighting yellow and placing some tables and trees around is not really doing it for us. So should we make a motion to approve the transparency?
Let's go through the findings. Well, yeah, I'll make a motion to, let's go through the findings. The approved alternate meets the intent of the transparency requirements. I think it does. And then the street facing building facade utilizes other architectural treatments to create visual interest to offset the reduction in transparency, which I think we've kind of seen here. And then number 2, the approved alternate conforms with the comp plan and adopted city plans. And then we need to justify it with some findings. LU 2.2.
UD 2.3.
UD 3.11 maybe.
DT 7.5.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve the transparency.
Second that motion.
Second by Adam. All in favor, or any other discussion? Being none, all in favor? Any opposed? None. Okay. So I would make a motion to defer this case to give the applicant time to come back with further comments and consideration for the amenity area with the comments that we've provided this evening. If there are other comments, I'll happy to amend to add those.
Corey, this is Carter. I just suggest that you might want to run down your comments and your suggestions. One thing I heard was that softening kind of the edge on Dawson Street, and someone said they like the sense of enclosure. I just wanted to see if there's any other things that you give the applicant.
I think one, we just need to see more of what's going on. I don't think that tables out in the area is going to do it. So we need to see what's going on. We've given ideas. I don't think it has to be of softening the edge. We don't know what that is. We'll leave that up to the professionals. But
Corey, I'd add that I think we generally need to see like a landscape architecture plan, right? An urban design sort of plan for what's sort of intended here, versus what appears to be more of an architectural box checking sort of exercise.
Right. Thank you. And then,
yeah, so Carter, I don't know that we want to get super specific. Other cases we can be specific because it's, you know, maybe one area like with the bank, it's like the bench is out in the middle of nowhere. But I don't know. With this, I feel like everybody's saying kind of the same thing, which is take some more steps in the design process for this urban landscape and show it to us.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to be a great design. It's just, it's not designed yet.
Is that clear enough as mud, Carter?
I believe so. I mean, the applicants are on the line. I will let you know that because you do split up your administrative alternates, your design alternates, your first meeting in the next month will be the quasi judicial one. And then we would typically put this on the second meeting of the month, which would be October 21st. So that would give them some time, I guess you could say, unless you really want to see it come back at that first meeting. Staff recommendation would be not to do that, but
my recommendation would give them as much time as they need, and I think they're going to need till the meeting on the 21st because you've got some deadlines before that for them to submit. So I would say at least the 21st of October. If they need to extend that, then they can. But they're early enough in the game where I don't feel like we're necessarily holding up the process either. So, which is I absolutely don't want to do. So I think we've given some comment. I think, you know, along with, you know, a 19-story of a blank wall, I think some consideration to the wind effect of the street and what this is going to do when future buildings get built out along with this needs to be considered, and other people have studied that have come before us and presented those in front of us. The other streets south in Lenore, I mean, those are even more. They don't even have the step backs at the top floor, the roof level and stuff. So those are even more so. So, so I would just say, you know, that's another comment that I have. And with that, yeah, I still have my motion to defer until October 21st.
Is this is the applicant, is it okay to ask a question, clarifying question?
Absolutely.
Okay, hi, I'm Natalie Mason. I'm actually new to the team, but I did want to ask, just to clarify, is the hope to see a little bit more of kind of landscape hardscape, or are there kind of questions around the actual massing that we've presented? Because those sort of seem to me two different paths, one being you know, a much more drastic path to change. So just wanted to clarify.
I'll speak from my perspective. I think, you know, generally speaking on the massing, I think what we're saying, or what a few of us have said, is that we are generally okay with the direction you guys are apparently wanting to take. It's just that in order for us to feel good about approving a situation like this, we're going to need to see that the alternative situation is going to be beneficial to the city of Raleigh. So, and I think right now we don't have enough information to sort of make that call. But I think you're headed in the right direction, I think. Anybody else?
Okay, thank you. I think that's helpful.
But isn't our comments are more to do with the amenity space, needing more information on the amenity space, correct?
That's what I was referring to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think mine is maybe not. Maybe, you know, I think maybe not, as far as we just need to see. I mean, I think they need to study it and give us some guidance of what this will do with the wind effect, and like other buildings that have come before us have done. And maybe they can come back and say, hey, we talked to so-and-so, and, you know, it's negative at the street level, pedestrian level, which, you know, which is fine. I mean, I think some of these other curves and stuff the reason some of those were done at some of these other buildings, according to them, were that it mitigates some of the wind effect down at street level. And that's some of the reason why this step back approach is part of the UDF. I'm not an expert on that. We'll leave that up to them. I have a motion on the table. Do I have a second or an alternate motion?
I'll second that, Corey. It's Chris.
Okay, Chris. Any other further discussion? All right, we'll take a vote. All in favor of deferring? Any opposed? Okay, that's unanimous. I will just say, yeah, I mean, if you want to work with staff, that's great. I'm happy to give any kind of feedback I can from my end. But so appreciate you all coming in front of us and discussing this case today. I'm going to move along. Thank you. I'll move right along on to case number 3, AAD 12-21, 601 East Six Forks Road. We have several participants, 6 participants: Nate Thompson, Rebecca Williamson, Steve Malloy, Ann Marks, Chad Cornwell, and Will Swearingen. I will open this up to Carter for staff presentation.
Thank you. I'm not going to go through the intent again of transparency or the findings. I'll go right to the staff report. The applicant is proposing to build a 1-story fast food restaurant along the Six Forks Road frontage at the shopping center located at the northeast corner of Six Forks Road and Wake Forest Road. Property zone commercial mixed use, 3 stories with a parking limited frontage. The applicant is requesting an alternate to the transparency requirements for the southern street front and ground floor along Six Forks. This is a general building type. 33% transparency is required. This is a public facing street, with 50% of that to be between 3 and 8 feet of the building facade. And then there's a requirements for transparency and reflectance, 80% and 15% respectively. As opposed to providing glazing that would meet these standards, the applicant proposes areas of spandrel glass and other architectural features to provide the visual interest. And above 2 of the proposed spandrel glass sections, the applicant has included some clear story windows with clear glazing. I'm happy to answer any questions or hand it over to their development design team.
Any quick questions for staff at this time? All right, being none, we'll go ahead and open it up to the applicant to present your project.
Hey guys, this is Nate Thompson. Address is 3408 Commerce Street, Alpharetta, Georgia 3009. So I'll work with Chick-fil-A. Excited about the opportunity to bring another Chick-fil-A to the Raleigh area and serve our customers. So this specific Chick-fil-A that we're showing here is a drive-through only restaurant. Just based on the size of this parcel and the available area, we chose to serve our customers in the best way just by focusing on the drive-through while also having a patio area outside for customers to pick up their food at a window and then go get it at one of our patio tables. Just looking at, so here's the overall site plan. Entering it, this is currently an enterprise rental car building that's on site here. We've shifted the building up against Six Forks Road, pretty much as close as you can get. And then we meet the length requirements for the building, as well as just the frontage requirements there. So pretty much the reason we're asking for the exception here is just due to the fact that the entire restaurant is a kitchen because it's a drive-through only. So any kind of transparency would look right into a kitchen. It also has issues with, if it's not reflective glass, then you might have issues with temperature in the restaurant. If sunlight is, constantly going into the kitchen, it changes your temperature, it changes humidity, everything else. Having raw chicken in the back of our restaurants, we're very, very careful with that. And then on kind of the east side of the building there, that is a restroom. So basically everything along Six Forks Road is either kitchen space or a restroom. So couldn't really do any transparency there. So it's kind of what I'm looking at, kind of visual interest area. I think if you can go to the next slide. Oh yeah, so we can look at this too. This is a landscape plan where we've kind of tried to soften up the distance between Six Forks Road and the building by adding a few trees and definitely some bushes there. Really just maximizing the landscaping as much as possible, since we know it's just a sensitive area. If we're using spandrel glass, I think it'll be a great way to just kind of have greenery, and then you've got some reflection of greenery with the spandrel glass. So it's definitely a nice view from my perspective. If you can go to the next slide. Yeah, so this is a view from Six Forks Road, and just kind of looking at the visual interest area. We just maximized the number of there are windows along that frontage, but of course they would all be spandrel glass. But just from a visual interest area, it's not all just plain brick, or we just try to maximize what would look like a window as much as possible. And then you've got that kind of wooden feature on the corner there that would be seen from Six Forks Road as well. And I've got Steve Malloy, who is our architect, on the call. So I'm going to pass it over to him, see if he wants to add anything to these elevations.
Yeah, thank you, Nate. So my name is Steve Malloy. I'm with Edwards and Hotchkiss Architects, E&H Architects. Is there any other information you need to know about me before I start?
Yeah, if you could just state your address.
The address, 5219 Austin Road, and that's in Hickson, Tennessee, 37343. Thank you. Okay. So we started looking at this right in the very beginning when we started talking about this project, and like, what are we going to do? Because we have the kitchen right there, and the spandrel glass. Chick-fil-A for years did not like spandrel glass. They would put it up and it just didn't quite work for them. So they have worked really hard to kind of come up with a spandrel glass that matches the clear glass, because they don't want to have like the store look closed if it is a certain color or whatever like that. So getting the match, the first store I think that they did was not one that we did, but I've seen pictures of it. And Carter, I think I shared those pictures with you. I don't know if you want to jump to that right now, but so for years where Chick-fil-A did not like the spandrel glass, they finally got this one that matches. So we feel like using the spandrel is going to meet the intent of the ordinance of trying to have the transparency. We do have, as Carter mentioned, actual clear story windows that are transparent, that do let light into the room. Nate brought up some really good points, about having too much light, but this is something like they've found like it's better for employees if you actually have some light in there. So just know like that is something Chick-fil-A cares about. We have placed it where we can. We just don't have it, like we don't have the transparent glass in like the restrooms and then certain parts of the kitchen where you've got either hoods or things like that that go up higher. So yeah, there you can see the restrooms in that bottom right corner. So yeah, we have used the spandrel glass to meet the visual interest. I forget the actual name of it. Yeah, visual interest area. So that's what we've tried. So the purple, the light blue is the actual transparent glass, and then the purple is where we're proposing to use the spandrel glass. And then we do have a little wood panel that's over on the side as well. So that's, I think that's the main thing I want to say is like, we feel like we're really trying to do the intent of the code. We do have glass where we can, and Chick-fil-A is happy with this look, and it's something that they literally worked on for years. Other questions?
One thing I'll just note, and this is Nate, just looking at some of our neighbors right now, you've got the Wegmans that this site's pretty close to. And the Wegmans actually placed what looks like a little what is it, like advertisements almost in the windows, and the bottom portion. That we stay very far away from something like that. We're trying to have something that's going to be visually appealing. And like I mentioned, I think with the spandrel, it kind of looks like real glass, like it would be see-through glass, because we don't want to make it look like our restaurant's closed. And with the reflectivity, it would actually reflect a little bit more of that greenery that we've done a good job really increasing that as much as possible in the area between Six Forks and our building. So hope y'all can consider our application here and kind of understand the whole purpose of what we're doing here with a drive-through only. There's very limited options for us to have see-through glass.
I appreciate your presentation, and I do appreciate you at least, you know, giving it a shot of trying to get some glazing or even some look of glazing. Definitely appreciate the clear glazing above. I think it will help with morale of employees working there all day. So, you know, one of our comments, we've seen the similar stuff before. I think you've taken it a step farther than most of the stuff we've seen in the past, at least at our first round. Is one of our comments typically is that, and it was brought up earlier, I believe Nate, that, you know, the stores do look closed when you have spandrel. And so has there been any consideration to, you know, light boxes or something like that, even though it still doesn't really necessarily meet the intent? It may make it look more like you're open at night. Or is that something that Chick-fil-A cares about?
Yes, this is Steve Malloy again. So that is something they care about, because we have had a past store that, just like you're talking about, the color of the glazing that went up, you know, when we finished it was like, it didn't look that great, and it did make the store look closed. So that is definitely a concern that Chick-fil-A has. And what I like about this particular spandrel glass is they feel, and if you saw in that photo, it's a really pretty good match to the clear. And so that's where we feel like this is probably the best thing we can do. You know, if we did, I mean, we did talk about kind of other options like light boxes, or if we want to put like, you know, the films or things like that are on there. But this, we just feel like is a better match overall.
There's one thing I'll note there with, you know, we do have what we can consider an amenity area with that patio space that's directly adjacent to Six Forks Road as well. So I think that's also something that's going to draw people in and kind of show, hey, you know, the Chick-fil-A, the red umbrellas are up. So it's very clear that we're open, and we hope that it's going to be a great place for our customers to dine and enjoy their food out there.
Thank you for that. Any other questions from the commission for the applicant?
What's the wood panel for?
That is, it's just an accent. That's where if you have pedestrians that are going to walk up, there's a window if on that corner, like where the red edge. Okay, so that's where you can walk up and you can order. And so the panel is really just to kind of create literally visual interest. You know, kind of give like a marker for where to, you know, come up and approach.
So you know, part of the transparency requirements are to allow natural light to go in to the building and create the feeling of openness and natural light from the outside. I'm having a little bit of tough feelings for the people who have to work in this, and I wonder if skylights or sky tubes or something to bring in more natural light is something you all have ever done before.
Yeah, Adam, that's a great comment. And you know, we care a lot about our team members, as I'm sure y'all understand the complexity with fast food and just our business right now. Keeping people working in the restaurants is extremely difficult. So it is our highest focus, literally across the business. Saying that, we do have a large number of these types of DTOs open across the country, and really are not having issues filling positions here. So we feel like, you know, just with that top portion of glass that is clear and allowing the light to come in there, that is, it's really been great, because the building's actually really skinny. So the small portion of light that comes in on both sides at that top portion of window actually fills the space pretty well. If you were to go with something like skylights or anything like that, you really do open up the opportunity for really uncontrolled temperatures. Because say if you put a skylight in one spot where you've got a whole, throughout the day, the sun's going to be going 180 degrees above you and changing the direction of the light throughout the day. So it really causes an uncontrolled environment that's tough to deal with, especially with raw chicken that we're working with. So yeah, it is a huge focus for us, making sure that our restaurants are enjoyable workspace for our team members. And we found that this one works out pretty well.
Great. I appreciate your response.
Is there any opportunity to make those panes at the top larger to bring down that intermediate mullion? Or I looked at the plan, it doesn't have any equipment shown, so I don't really know what the layout is on the inside.
No, that's something that we have looked at before. So you get into like the ceiling, and then you've got the equipment above the ductwork, then your roof, and you've got your rooftop units, which the parapet wall screens. So yeah, kind of like Nate said, Chick-fil-A has studied those windows for a long time. I've been doing Chick-fil-A for almost 20 years, and I'm going to say maybe it was 10 years ago is when they really started adding those windows into the kitchen, and that became, important to them for, employee morale and just to create a better environment. So that's something that they have really kind of studied, and in some ways that's why they are the size that they are. That they have to be high enough that they can have the equipment and things like that down below, and then we have to keep it lower than where the ceiling is, and that's really what is dictating the size of those windows right now.
Hey, Steve, 20 years with Chick-fil-A. How many of these Chick-fil-A's have you done?
I have no idea. I literally have no idea.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
So in your experience, where you've come up against sort of similar situations, what other ways have you guys found to solve these, outside of this solution?
Okay, so instead of spandrel glass, what else have we done in the past?
Yeah, have you sort of done some things interior wise with the floor plan? Have you, obviously film, you mentioned that.
Well, it used to be that Chick-fil-A's kind of go-to thing if they didn't like the spandrel glass, right? So they was like, what can we do with brick? So it might be like brick and herringbone and that kind of thing to add additional detail and interest that way. But they felt like that was a better look than, say, the spandrel glass that was not colored well, that they did not want this thing to look good. Okay, Corey.
Yeah, I guess what I was really asking is like, where you've needed a transparency requirement like the city of Raleigh, like this, how have you solved it in the past?
Well, it usually ends up going to a meeting just like we're having here and us discussing options with the city. But a lot of times in the past, it was going to do something else, go to brick herringbone, additional detailing. So that's not really adding transparency. It was more kind of just recognize that, yeah, this, it's problematic for us to put a window on this wall. Another option that Chick-fil-A does have, but it's not as close to the intent of the code, is like we have like metal louvers that are also, again, kind of decorative that are applied in certain cases to again, create sort of the visual interest. So that's something else that Chick-fil-A is kind of designed that they have in their back pocket that it's like, okay, we like the way this thing looks. But I feel we didn't go with that option because we felt that the spandrel glass was a closer match to what you all wanted. Does that help?
Yeah, I mean, it answers the question. I guess what I was looking for is like, the intent of the code is like, this is a retail building at a very busy, prominent corner in the city of Raleigh. And the intention is for it to look like it's alive.
Right.
And I think this is going to operate more like a cookout, right? Which is just, a blank box with a bunch of cars.
Oh, the function of the way the restaurant's going to
Yeah, just the way it functions. It's not, it's definitely not retail. It's a drive-through.
Yeah, it is. Drive-through only.
Positive is that all that happens on the backside, so you don't have to see all those drive-through cars as you're driving down the road.
Right.
So that's the positive. I think one thing that Chris was bringing up, which I thought was kind of interesting, was that, you know, that intermediate mullion, I don't know what height that is right now. It looks like if you have 7-foot doors, that's probably up at 7, 8 or something like that. I didn't know. Like Chris was saying, if you brought that down to 7 feet, if that got a little bit more natural light in there, but there may be equipment and stuff back there that's in the way. But just a way to get a little bit more natural light in there.
I believe that is at the 8-foot mark, and that's because of it. You know, in the stores, they're not putting anything like on shelving or anything like that above, like, say, 7 feet or whatever. So that's why it's at that 8-foot.
Any other questions? I'm getting hungry, so we need to keep this rolling. This Chick-fil-A is making me hungry. Should have put this last. Or brought some Chick-fil-A. One of the two.
Who needs a milkshake?
Any other questions for the applicant or staff? I understand there's no other participants that have signed up to speak, so I'll bring it back to the table for discussion and deliberations and findings. Any thoughts? Let me just go ahead and read. So there's just 3 findings that this needs to meet. So the approved alternate meets the intent of the transparency requirements. That's what we're talking about. The approved alternate conforms with the comp plan and adopted city plans. And then number 3, the street facing building facade utilizes other architectural treatments to create visual interest to offset the reduction in transparency. So those are the findings. With that being said, yeah, open to thoughts, comments, motions.
I appreciate Corey's highlighting of how dead it's going to look, like a cookout often does. And I appreciate the design's attempt to make it so that you really aren't seeing cars right on that 6-foot facade. I wonder if I wonder why there weren't more umbrellas. I made it like an umbrella or 2 on that 6-fork side. I mean, I guess it's a pretty busy road, but that would sure help make it feel like it was open. But I think generally they've met these findings, gone up above and beyond these findings. So.
I think they've enhanced the landscaping as well. I mean, I'm not a landscape architect, but you know, they have gone to a little extra effort. I think that helps kind of visually soften that facade as you're driving by, and so it's not going to be so stark, you know, just a big wall. The glass, even though it is not translucent, I mean, it's, you know, it's spandrel. You can still, it still breaks up that wall nicely. That with all the enhanced landscaping, you know, I don't necessarily have a big problem with it. I appreciate that comment though about maybe bringing some of those tables around or something to make it feel more active. They are kind of henned in there though. I mean, it is a small little lot. It's a tight site.
Yeah. I think it's going to be busy. You know, across the street's Costco, and it's going to be a line of cars at all hours.
Anyone want to make a motion to approve, or?
Let's go see if we can find some policies to reinforce our findings. LU 2.2.
UD 1.3.
Maybe UD 4.6. All right. Have a motion.
make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Was that Will?
Yes,
Adam,
that was Will.
Adam motion, Will second. Any other conversation? Being none, all in favor? Any opposed? None, so that's unanimous approval. Thank you very much for coming in front of us.
Thank
Look
y'all.
forward to stopping through there.
Looking forward to getting started. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. All right, let's keep it rolling. So case number 4, AAD 13-21, 1108 Capitol Boulevard. We have, I believe, just one applicant, Clark Malpass, that we can unmute. And if Carter, if you'd like to go ahead and give a staff presentation, that'd be great.
As you mentioned, the address, the request is for an alternate to landscaping screening, specifically mechanical screening. The intent, landscaping regulations, is to provide meaningful and well-designed screening and buffering, and tree and shrub planting should not interfere with the safe vehicular and pedestrian circulation on the site. In terms of the findings, this is one that you typically see the first two when every alternate. The third is that the alternate is considered equal to or better than the standard. In terms of this specific site, a little under 1.5 acres. So an industrial mixed use, 5 stories. They plan to develop as a car dealership. It's been that in the past. The applicant is requesting an alternate to allow mechanical equipment to be located between the proposed building and the street. And that's really what the UDO does not permit unless it goes through an alternate. In this case, the applicant wants to locate a wall-mounted mechanical unit on the building's southern facade, which fronts on Old Williamson Road. And on the attached plans, the applicant proposes to surround the mechanical unit with a wood screen. I'm happy to answer questions, or the applicant is here as well.
Any questions for staff at this point? Being none, yeah, we'll turn it over to Mr. Malpass. If you'd like to go ahead and present, that'd be great.
Hey there, it's Clark Malpass, ESC Properties, address on record, 4101 Bachelor Bluffs Lane, Raleigh, North Carolina. So yeah, basically we're just trying to put a building back there that was removed a couple years ago. The site was supposed to be developed, and basically it kind of fell through, and the building that we want to put back, just like Carter said, the mechanical equipment is facing Old Williamson Road. So we just want to build a wooden fence basically to block the view of the mechanical equipment. I'm not sure, Carter, if you have the Google Street View of the previous car dealership that was there. So actually the previous building there had that mechanical equipment on the end. I don't know if you can zoom or not, but yeah, so basically we just want allowance to put a wood fence around that mechanical equipment. Yeah, but yeah, so the fence would have to be, I guess, 13 feet tall to block the mechanical equipment. Seems kind of redundant to me, but that was kind of the one thing, the UDO, that I noticed that kind of stood out to me after the site plan comments review.
So you're looking to put basically the same building back. It's a pre-manufactured building, so the unit is off the ground, similar to what the previous building had.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's the building, but it's going to be painted and redone. Been working with Vanguard Modular, and they've looked at this building. Basically, we kind of got strung along by this developer, and kind of got in a situation we weren't too familiar with, and we're just trying to make it usable again. I've applied for just to get like a temporary power pole for electricity out there, and can't even get that. So it's been a tumultuous time. It's caused a bunch of strife and arguments. How the whole deal fell through, but yeah, more or less just trying to make it usable again. I actually own the property next door to there too. Capital Auto pre-owned the other used car dealership, and yeah, we just need a building on the site.
I'm just curious, can you put wood that close to the intake for that AC unit?
I guess that'd be a question for maybe the fire marshal, possibly.
I
I'm
think
not
they usually
sure.
have a bit of a offset that they require for those.
Right, we could change the material that the fence is built out of. That could be a possibility.
My concern would be for the maintenance and upkeep of that fence, because although it appears to be pressure treated lumber, that we all know that they fall into disrepair pretty quickly. So,
Especially at 13 feet high. I mean, gee whiz, that's.
Yeah, I mean, can we just not require this and move on? I mean, is there sort of a space in the code that allows us to just let them put a building there, and we can?
Is there room?
Next case,
I guess.
It's kind of one thing I was wondering, because Old Williamson Road, the road that runs beside there, it goes up to the rail yard, and it's not very heavily trafficked. It's primarily used for semi trucks, and then Jack Alpha and Will Alpha, they have a warehouse behind us they use for their construction company. So it's not very like highly trafficked by typical traffic.
Corey, I'm only saying that because I think it'd probably look better. We're the appearance commission. We make appearance calls, and it just seems like it'd be a lot less obtrusive to just let him put the trailer there. And
I'm wondering how this got to us.
I asked that.
I'm wondering if
just about every case, but
I'm looking at toy store buildings. I'm like, man, these guys are going to laugh at this.
I'm just wondering, I would, is there any opportunity to plant some of this in front of this, or do something other than, landscaping sometimes a lot easier to maintain than a fence, and it sure would soften it. I'm just wondering if there's something.
Absolutely. Today is my birthday, and that would be the greatest birthday present in the world if you told me I could plant some bushes there.
I'm looking at our landscape experts here, and
so Clark, Corey, so I've done a similar project. Like, it wasn't pre-manufactured, but when we were getting approvals for our mechanical units on a building we were doing downtown, if they were on the building and not on the ground, we got out of having to do the screening requirements. It was on a mini split, like the suitcase units. I don't know if maybe they're misunderstanding what the product is.
So if we go back to that elevation, the photo, I guess, of the existing of that unit you want to put on there, you're saying that 13 feet is the top of that unit as it would stand right now, or how tall is that? How high is that roof line? About 15.
Yeah, well, so measuring from the deck, it'd be about 13 feet to the bottom of the roof line right there, where it kind of juts out. And then I think the roof goes another maybe like 2 feet above that. I can't say exactly without looking at the drawing.
Is there any opportunity to take out some asphalt around that thing in a semicircle and put in a tree or two, or a shrub?
Yeah, so that's one thing so the footprint hasn't been changed at all. Basically there's grass there that we can definitely just plant something. We haven't impacted any of the existing asphalt or anything.
Yeah, I feel a lot better about getting rid of the heat island effect and planting something. And I mean, that's all that asphalt out there has got to be hotter than
Oh yeah, no,
I think,
yeah,
you know, a
trust me.
little area that somebody could sit at, even if you have a little tree and you could sit underneath the tree, you know, or
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, trust me,
eat
I've
your
been
lunch. I
sweating
mean,
out
geez.
there. I
Yeah, I
know,
agree
right?
with that. Let's just plant a tree and
Yeah.
save
I mean,
the
if
save
you
the
put
world.
if you put that wood screen, how are you going to maintain the HVAC unit?
Yeah, so that was another thing. We basically had plans to build this giant door that probably
Chutes
would.
and ladders.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, basically, I feel like I'm just in front of you guys right now because of the nuance, but you know, I'm just going through the motions, I guess. You know, I don't
So
do this for a living, so it's complete like new experience to me.
would you be amenable to planting a tree that grows at least 13 feet high, an appropriate distance away from that would provide a screen?
Sure.
Yep. How about an oak tree?
An oak tree. There we go. There we go.
We're in the city of oaks.
The city of Oaks. Yeah, my thoughts exactly.
I'll leave it up to the landscape architect to specify what that needs to be to provide a little bit of screening, but you know, I think something to sit under and provide some shade would be nice too. But
Yeah, actually, I mean, understory tree might be better because the crown is at 13 feet. An oak tree might just be a trunk at 13 feet, but not for 15 years. But so I kind of feel like it doesn't matter too much, but it doesn't look like you have a whole lot of room to plant a tree there. So might want to consider something narrow.
I also want to be amenable to, you know, his cars and stuff. I mean, he didn't want to have something that's going to be putting leaves or sap or anything of that on his cars either. He's trying to sell, you know, so I think we need to be careful.
Yeah, I can go through my tree book and find some appropriate foliage and see what's available for sure. But yeah, that really makes my day that I don't have to build a giant fence. You have no idea. But yeah.
Commissioners, I would suggest you make it, if you're going to do a condition, which it sounds like you're going to, specify a number, minimum height, maybe even a species, and then that could probably be the cleanest way to do this.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I'll find the Latin names and all that, and pretty sure I have might know somebody that can give me a tree dictionary or something. So.
Well, we have a landscape. We have a landscape architect on staff right with us right here. So I'm just asking, yeah, can we go ahead and specify an option or two or three that we can give him, and specify a radius of an area so it'll grow with asphalt that we can remove so it'll.
Right. Yeah, oak tree would be cool, but the oak tree might grow into the asphalt with the root system. You know, so yeah.
Is this site plan where it says 11.7? Is that where you're talking about putting the HVAC unit?
Yeah. So the HVAC unit's made right there on the end, so it would be.
Yeah, that would be it. Right where it says 11.7.
Yeah, but there's a decent amount of grass right there. You know, without looking at the exact drawing, I mean, you could definitely fit like can't think of the name of them, like some kind of fir tree right there, probably, or like the skinny like Italian type trees. You know what I'm talking about? Just go like straight up.
Yeah, I think it should probably be evergreen if the point is to screen it. So, you know, skyrocket juniper or some kind of vertically oriented narrow variety of juniper that I think would be great. Not an arborvitae; they get way too big. It looks like you only have about 10 feet of space there, so I would plant 2 junipers at least 7 feet off the edge of the building, and yeah.
There you go.
Does that work?
Easy enough. Yeah. Go buy some junipers. All right.
Yeah, like a skyrocket or something that's narrow.
Yeah, exactly. No cactuses, probably. That's probably too hazardous. Yeah.
All right. Is that enough, Carter, to have you got that?
I do. I think I can craft a condition and maybe even run it by Adam if I need to.
With that, I'm gonna go ahead and, well, let's go ahead and, we need to find some policies, I guess, right? So the approved alternate meets the, let's see, where are we? Approved administrative alternate meets the intent of the landscape screening regulations, which I think we can do. The approved, yeah, the approved alternate forms a comp plan, city plans. Approved alternate is considered equal to or better the standard, which I think we would agree is. And so, yeah, can we find some policies?
UD 3.8.
OU 5.2.
All right. With that, I'll go ahead and provide a motion to approve as with the recommendations that Carter's going to write up on our behalf. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Patrice. All in favor? Any opposed? Unanimous approval. All right.
All right. Thank you guys
you.
very much. Awesome. Good talking to you.
Hey, we appreciate it.
Thank you, Carter.
Adam, you just left your indelible mark on Raleigh.
Indelible mark. Yeah, really. I know. Streets,
I'm going to smile every time I go by there.
Who knows? Thank you.
All right. Case number 5. We have AAD 14-21, 3905 Reedy Creek Road. We have
Corey,
three.
I need to.
Yeah, just a sec. We have 3 applicants: Mark Frederick, John Calvert, Will Johnson. If they can be unmuted, and we'll let Carter do his presentation. I believe, Chris, you are asking to be recused. Is that
Yes,
correct?
please.
Yeah. Sounds. If there's any issue with that, please let me know for the commission. Otherwise, we'll turn over to Carter.
Thank you. Just doing some quick counting on commission members.
I think
we
we're
are
still
okay.
Good, yeah.
Okay, final one of the night. 3905 Reedy Creek Road. The request is for alternate to blank wall standards. The intent of which is to prevent large, monotonous expanses of undifferentiated building mass. And that the level of architectural detail should be most intense at the street level, where it is within view of pedestrians on the sidewalk. In terms of the findings that we'll be looking at, of course, the intent of the section, comprehensive plan and any adopted city plans, the increase in blank wall area is offset by additional architectural treatments and increased vertical landscaping. And finally, the amount of blank wall area for buildings located on an urban frontage should not be more than 40%. I don't believe this, actually it might be. Yeah, urban limited frontage. The applicant is proposing to develop a 34-acre site with an office use and associated parking. The property is currently under consideration for rezoning. It's actually one of the first projects we have going through concurrent site plan review and rezoning. So office mixed use 12 stories is their proposal. Currently zoned OX3 urban limited. Since it is a general building, they have a maximum 50 by 50 blank wall. And they're actually asking for a section of its northern facade that faces Reedy Creek Road. In terms of, in lieu of the standards, the proposal is to force the facade the pattern of reveals that mimics the window pattern on the majority of the same facade. In addition, the applicant proposes to help break up the blank wall with signage on the building, as well as tree and shrub plantings between the building and the street. I'm happy to answer any questions or hand it off to their design development team.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? All right. Being none, we will go ahead and turn it over. Who is it? Mr. Mark Frederick?
Yes, good evening. It's Mark Frederick again, Parker Poe, 301 Fayetteville Street. Also with me from the development team is John Calvert from LS3P and Will Johnson from the State Department of Administration. Before I turn it over to Mr. Calvert, I want to provide a little bit of background on the project. The requested administrative alternate relates to the new North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services campus on Blue Ridge Road. The project has been in motion since 2015 when the state conveyed its Dorothy Dix Park property to the city of Raleigh. And the General Assembly issued a mandate for the DHHS to consolidate its various offices across the triangle into one headquarters. The project, as Carter mentioned, is going through a concurrent rezoning and ASR. The rezoning is set for a public hearing before City Council on October 5th, and phase 1 of the project is currently going through ASR, which includes the office tower and parking garage you see on the screen. The timing for this project is really critical to get the DHHS employees off the Dorothy Dix Park property by the end of their lease, which ends in 2025. And with that, I'll turn it over to John Calvert of LS3P to get into the actual details of this request.
Hey, good evening, everyone. So we see here just sort of an overview, just to give everybody some context. This is a perspective view, sort of looking north along Blue Ridge Road.
John, can you go ahead and give your name and address?
Yeah,
just for the
absolutely.
record? Yeah.
Sorry, John Calvert, 434 Fayetteville Street, Suite 1700, Raleigh, North Carolina, 27601. So if we were imagining the North Carolina Museum of Art, that would be just sort of off the page to the right in this rendering, just for some context. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So here on the site plan, as you saw from the last slide, we pretty much have a glass office building that we've sort of conceived this as, and we've sort of taken all of the building utilities, and to combine those into a central energy plant. Of course, that being sort of a area that requires screening and a lot of sort of opaque walls. We've sort of taken all of that, condensed it into this one corner of the site in a way that it can screen other utilities using its mass and allowing the rest of the building to be completely transparent and glass. You can kind of see where the red arrow is. That is the corner we're sort of talking about. The CUP is also sort of up against the, if you see that orange dotted line, that is a Duke energy transmission line. So that's sort of, to us, makes us feel like that's sort of, that makes this sort of the back end of the site. And this actually allows us to have a little bit more standoff distance between where all the people are working and this transmission line. Beyond that is the North Carolina National Guard facility. And one of their things that they've asked us to look at is just to be cognizant of the ability to have overwatch from this facility over into their facility. And in keeping with that, that has also been another helpful reason to actually locate this sort of more solid CUP on that side near their building. Let's go to the next slide. So just briefly to sort of explain the massing of the building, I wanted to go through sort of how the architectural facade works. This is the front side sort of here. Basically, we have two parallel promenades, an exterior one and an interior one. These are the main public spaces of the building. Next slide. Then in terms of fenestration, we've sort of color-coded the fenestration based on which areas are more publicly oriented and which areas are more program and work oriented. So we see here the bottom plinth is more public oriented, and also all of the conference rooms, break rooms, and those facilities going up the tower are also coded in that way. Next slide. And then that translates into our glazing selections. So we see here basically the glazing is coded to where we saw on the last slide, with G1 being much more transparent and G2 being sort of a medium level of transparency so that an appropriate level of light comes in for the office workers. And we can see in the upper left corner the sort of more the balance of the massing here, if you will, between these glass boxes and this precast box of the CUP. Next slide. Then to add a little bit of visual interest and playfulness onto these public areas and also convey a sense of motion, we've come in with a rhythm of these architectural fins. And that's really just another thing that sort of keys this area as different or special. Next slide. For the rest of the office area that doesn't have those fins, we have given a rhythm of fritting. This further gives us a little more solar control while providing visual interest. Next slide. So briefly, these are two additional renderings, one from Blue Ridge Road. So this would be looking if you stood at the NCMA and looked across the street, and one on Reedy Creek Road. This would be looking down Reedy Creek Road towards the NCMA. This is sort of an overview of a lot of the different strategies that we're going to be using, but I'm going to go into those a little bit more as we go through them in the next slide. So this is a massing diagram. It's basically a 180 from the other one, and it's really sort of showing the juxtaposition of this glass box and a glass plinth with a precast parking deck and a precast central utility plant. So we're trying to sort of play off the precast of the central utility plant with the parking deck. This will be the same precast to match with all the same patterns as we'll see in future slides. And basically we're trying to keep these very, very pure volumes from a massing standpoint. We felt this was especially appropriate being close to the NCMA, having sort of this massing at play. So there's a bit of a play and dichotomy of having these pure volumes, one being solid, one being glass. You can also begin to see a little bit here. We'll talk about this more when we get to sections, but there's an areaway directly in front of the CUP that conceals a lot of our louvers and transformers and a lot of the other more unpleasant things. And behind it sort of forms a service yard where there's roll-up doors to service the chillers and other sort of service entrances. Next slide. So this is a diagram of sort of one of the corners in the glass. I know we're talking about the blank wall, but this is important because the patterns set up by the glass carry over into the precast and into the site. So sort of starting at the top of the diagram, we have two datums that have each datum having a mullion, one at top of slab, one at bottom slab, in between being a middle panel. Then below that, we have the next datum, which is at the soffit and bottom of beam location. So if you look at our cantilever condition, the bottom of that cantilever condition to clear the beam forms that datum of that line. Then going down one more, the next datum is formed by the roof curb. So where the roof curb needs to come up, that datum will come around the building. Then we've repeated those datums on every single floor, sort of regardless if they need to have a roof curb or a soffit condition, to sort of have a very unique or very, very rigid grid basically on the whole building. And we'll be carrying that across into the precast in the site, as we'll see in the next slide. This is just sort of showing that same effect sort of at night of those rhythms. Let's go ahead and go to the next one. This is showing those public areas where we talked about the two different promenades. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so now this is the north elevation looking south. It's showing the whole building. We're going to zoom in here in a minute, but you can begin to see how these grids are sort of lined up. Up at the tower on this side, we see the fritting that we talked about earlier, and down at the bottom, we see the lighter glass that's more transparent that forms a plinth. Then set back from the plinth, we see the precast of the CUP and you can kind of begin to see, we'll see it more on the next one when we zoom in, but all of these datums will carry right on over there into that one, and there'll be several setbacks. We also begin to see the street trees that are starting up. One thing to note in terms of the street trees is the corner of our site at Reedy Creek and Blue Ridge is actually in a DOT easement. And so that's actually a separate City of Raleigh project that we're trying to coordinate with on that corner. So we're sort of showing where we're picking up from there with the street trees, which will also serve to help screen and alleviate sort of the massing of this wall. Let's go to the next slide. So containing all of our chillers, air handlers, and everything else, there really isn't opportunity to have windows or openings into this. Rather than having sort of stripes or undulations or anything, we really were favoring more a pure mass in terms of the architecture as sort of being what was appropriate for this design. We can see the two different colors, the red and the blue, with the red being a wider reveal the blue being a wider reveal and the red being a more subtle reveal. Again, these aligning with the mullions and patterning of the building. We'll see in some of the last renderings, but the same sort of precast in terms of texture and patterning will be used in all the site walls, all the retaining walls, the parking deck, and we think it will really tie the facility together. It's going to be, in terms of texture, it's a lightly sandblasted medium gray precast. This particular one is an insulated sandwich panel. Now we can begin to see also now that we zoomed in a little bit, as the hill starts to fall off down the grade, we can see the building signage. And we'll see, when we jump to the next slide, we'll also be able to see that areaway. But there is sort of a low wall in front of here that's sort of setting back the rest of the facade. Let's go back to that next one. So here's sort of a street section. And as you can see here, we have our transformers down low, and we've also tried to keep all of our, well, as many as we could of the louvers down low so that we can have really sort of a pure object up here. We can also see that from the primary glass facade, we're set back about 15 feet here. And from the line of the retaining wall, which is also sort of forming a low planter wall, ringing the building, from there we're about 26 feet set off, which provides just a little bit more relief. And that wall really can help, we feel helps break down the massing and more relate to a human scale. Let's go to the next one. So this is our landscaping plan here. We do have an update here. We're switching the red maple street trees to black gum street trees. These street trees relating more to what is across the street at the NCMA. And we think they also are going to fit better in that narrow planting strip. One thing to point out here is one thing the project is doing is extending the greenway. So that's why you see the multi-use path there in addition. And over to the right, if you can kind of tell how the underlay changes a little bit, that is where we're picking up with and really sort of meshing into the City of Raleigh's project for that corner. We also have a varied amount of landscaping. We can begin to see, if you can look and see where the areaway ends, the massing of that areaway is set up so that it, the datum of it just carries on into a planter. And that planter just keeps running along the whole building, serving both as an aesthetic aspect and also as sort of a security barrier, this being a glass state office building. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so in this view, this perspective view, we can really start to see the human scale. We got the bike path, and we can start to see some of the vegetation. Since this is sort of a dusk view, we can also start to see sort of the shadow effect that's going to play on here. I want to point out sort of the patterning of the precast, because we're going to see that again sort of around the site and some of the further renderings. This view is looking north, excuse me, not looking north, it's looking towards the NCMA. so east along Reedy Creek Road. Next slide. And this is looking back west along Reedy Creek Road, going down the hill. So this is taken sort of right about where the state's project ends. You can see that retaining wall that forms the areaway coming over and forming a low planter wall, which sort of raises the building up a little bit off the street level. And then we have the more transparent glass down at the plinth. Next slide. And this gives another view of sort of the view from the North Carolina Museum of Art, sort of back across the street. Next slide. Okay, and now this is sort of the way if you were coming to the building as a pedestrian on foot that you would approach. And we can, what I really wanted to show here is how the pattern of that precast is really an important motif to the project. It's not just something that's covering the CUP wall, it's at the parking deck, and it's coming all around all of these site walls. We have a fair amount of grade out here, so there's quite a bit of undulation and play at the site, but requires a lot of low walls and high walls like the ones we see here. And that pattern is something we're planning to carry all through there. The wall that we're looking in the foreground here, we're planning to actually do the move where you bring the outside in and have that very same pattern on the inside of our building. So it's not an insignificant patterning. Next slide. And so here's just sort of around the corner. We have sort of a low, on the left, what you're seeing is sort of a rainwater garden, similar to what's at the NCMA now, right across the street. And you can see again that these precast walls and their patterning is fairly primary, also acting as a screening wall between this building and our neighbor, the Motor Fleet Management Building, which requires a security fence around it. Next slide. So this is sort of just a summary slide. I'd be happy to take questions or go back to any of the ones we've mentioned before. I believe we have one slide after this. Is there one more? Yeah, I think this is the sort of the summary slide. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions from the commission for the applicant or staff?
I guess I just want to say that's a really thoughtful and well done presentation, and I really appreciate how you walked us through not just what was going on with the blank wall area, but how everything tied together. So I really appreciate that. I did have one question about the landscape in front of the CUP, and what if you could spell out the intent of using the species. And I know you're not a landscape architect, but this is a great one. So the variegated lily turf that's right up against the CUP, or up against the CUP, the wall in front of the CUP, it looks like it has soft touch holly in front of it. Is that right?
Yeah, I believe so. Is that an issue with the relative heights of the plants?
Yeah, I guess I was just trying to figure out if I was looking at if there's like a wall or a drop between them, or if there was some kind of design intent that went along with it. But there seems to be some I'm just confused about the different heights there.
Yeah, the first one I would actually need to check on. We start out with not having any because we really want the building signage to be fairly clear. But then we begin to pick these up. The second one where you see that second call out where it's this soft touch holly, the one thing we really haven't been able to screen was sorry, I forgot to mention this. There is a backflow preventer, and then part of that's underground and part of it isn't. So that was the one thing we really felt like we couldn't get. It could be put down in the areaway, but we were just concerned about the maintenance of that with potential for flooding. So we have it sort of up there behind the bushes. So in that particular instance, that is the the reason or the rationale for the taller bushes sort of being out front. The one all the way to the left, I think we could probably reverse those.
Yeah, and I assume the beds are delineated by building facade elements, right? I mean, basically, you're creating these rectangles in the landscape that reflect something up on the building.
Yeah, we're on a pretty strict 5-foot module here on this building. It's one of the tighter ones I've ever done. And then the columns and downspouts that you saw there, they're sort of being expressed. Those are on a 30-foot module.
Okay. Yeah, my only other thought about the landscape as it relates to the CUP is black gums, when they are put in narrow strips, they don't grow as tall as they do in a lot of other conditions. And so they're really, I think a lot of people feel like they're going to be canopy trees in a situation like this, but they end up being more like understory trees. And it seems like from a design intent, you may pick some of the other, I love how you picked some of the native trees that were over at NCMA. And I think that there might be one or two over there that would do better with the design intent. Just a thought.
Yeah, sorry, gonna show my lack of landscaping knowledge here about how wide a planting strip. I know we don't really have a good sense of scale on this view, but about how wide a planting strip would be appropriate for a black gum, if you know off the top of your head.
Well, they'll grow in like a 4 or 6 foot planting strip, but they won't get tall quickly like they would if they were in an open field or something like that. Whereas some of the oaks will still put down tap roots and get tall.
Okay.
They'll look more like what you had in the rendering, which I think was part of the design intent.
I want to echo Adam's comment at the beginning and say I appreciate the thoughtful presentation. I thought that was great. Gave us a good sense of what was going on. It was nice to hear a little bit more about the whole project as a whole and not just this little section. So I appreciate that. And, you know, this plan view, it's very interesting to me. I really like the look of this plan view. I think it tends to get lost a little bit in the rendering because here it shows kind of a little bit more undulating to me, from my eye. It ties in better to the other side and to the art museum and stuff, but in the rendering it seems pretty straight, and you know, so I appreciate this view of it. I think that's pretty nice. It looks very thoughtful. So the wall, if I'm not mistaken, I mean, it's like 45 plus feet tall. I mean, it's not insignificant, but
yeah,
you know,
that's right.
And proportionally to the building, I mean, it doesn't look like such a huge thing, but you know, but it is not an insignificant wall. It's, you know, 45 feet or so tall. And then you have the signage down there, which I think is great. I think that's a nice little touch.
Would you consider this the kind of primary entrance in this first phase, or do you see the southern access from District Drive more of the primary entrance?
Yeah, so for site access, you know, we have, I don't know if we, yeah, I guess, yeah, this view kind of shows it. So really what we're anticipating in terms of traffic flow, and we are hoping, is that we get a balanced entry from both sides. This having been a huge project with, you know, potential future phases, that's sort of the most ideal is people coming from both directions, especially with all the peak hours. So we do anticipate sort of both of those being sort of primary, or we're treating both of those as primary vehicular entries. In terms of pedestrian entries, I probably should have touched on this, but there is a bus stop in that on the corner near the intersection of Blue Ridge and Reedy Creek. It's an existing bus stop that was put there fairly recently. And so if you're arriving that way, we imagine that you would you would walk sort of through the public entry using those 2 promenades that we mentioned earlier. Does that answer the question?
It does. Thanks.
Well, I hope that bus stop's nice, but you're really at the mercy of the DOT on that corner, aren't you? I mean, your whole building facade is right behind the DOT corner there.
It is. We've been, well, I shouldn't say but our team has been trying hard to get in touch with the team that's doing that project. Obviously, it's impossible for the team who's done that to try to coordinate with a building they know nothing about. And we've been really trying to get in touch with them because we're trying to set up street tree rhythms and, you know, have some cohesion. And here, lo and behold, we have this thing that we can't very well control. I'm sure we're going to endeavor to continue trying to reach out to them, because I think we can work together.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that could be a really nice or a really bad, but it could be a really nice part to that facade if done.
Are you talking about the intersection enhancements going on there?
Reedy Creek and Reedy Creek and Blue Ridge
project.
I believe, and I don't want to misspeak, but I believe it is a small piece of that intersection improvement is some landscape improvements on that corner. But I believe it's all one project.
But it is a pretty good sized triangular piece there, right?
That's right. When long ago, Reedy Creek just went straight right through here, and then when they built the NCMA, they did a street alignment, and the land that was left over to this day belongs to DOT.
I thought it was a city street project that was pedestrian project that was looking at potentially using that corner space or improving it, I should say.
If I could add something, this is Will Johnson. I'm with the North Carolina Department of Administration. We have a sister agency with the North Carolina Museum of Art, right? And we've reached out to them specifically about their loaned art program. And in that location, we lovingly refer to that as our parklet, because we would like to have public art, outdoor art in that location. We're kind of waiting for a little more vocabulary from the landscaping plan that happens there. And then how do we drag public art south on Blue Ridge into our main pedestrian entry plaza, and then down into our main campus plaza down below, where we're 20 feet below the Blue Ridge sidewalk. So we have an internal art sharing initiative going on with them also. So as we get smarter about that, we'll have a lot better answers of what happens with that green space.
We appreciate that, Will. Appreciate your comments. I do need to ask you though to state your address for the record, just so they have it on record.
Oh, sure. Well, the official address for that would be 1307 Mail Service Center, which is actually the building we'll be demolishing underneath our office building there. But my address is in Midtown. I'm at 4500 Bartlett Drive in Raleigh, so I'll give you that one.
All right, excellent. Yeah, well, you bring up a good point, and one that really isn't for this commission, but one I've been kind of struggling with on the Blue Ridge Corridor Alliance is how to get with that family-friendly art museum right across the street. Can you incorporate some of that into this building? But I know the spaces are complicated and locked down these days and stuff, but it sure would be nice to be able to create some kind of something in the first floor lobby of some art.
Well, and Corey, we look forward to doing that. There's a lot of things in the future, as you know, that's going to happen in the Blue Ridge Corridor, particularly on this property, and the city's initiative going on now on the east side of Blue Ridge Road, and with that improved intersection with the bike and pedestrian sidewalks, is just part of it. If you look down where our Blue Ridge Road entry plaza is, if you look right across Blue Ridge, there's an hourglass shape, which is kind of a very strong axial center line to the Museum of Art's outdoor spaces. We think that is a great candidate for a mid-block pedestrian crossing between Reedy Creek and District Drive. So as we get into future phases of development of the south end of the project, that's kind of whited out down there, and we relocate the motor fleet management and the Troop C headquarters facility, that we're drawing more of the museum across the street. Our landscape architect is Surface 678, which is the same firm that did the museum. And the vocabulary we're using with hardscape and softscapes and plantings is we're taking our cue from some of the things that are happening on the museum property. So all of that connectivity, we're getting closer and closer, you know, as we move into this. We're at the midpoint of our design phase, and I think we've come a long ways. We have a long way to go, but I think we have some good foundational concepts that they're going to help us out with that.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Well, I appreciate the whole team. Great team, great team effort on this project. So, and I appreciate the openness and willing to come in front of all these different commissions and talk about your project. So, any other comments, questions from the commission? Being none, we'll go ahead and I don't believe there's anybody signed up to speak. So let's go ahead and bring it back to the table and close it for deliberation and findings. Any thoughts, comments from the commission? Who'd like to start it off?
All right. Well, since it's been quiet, I mean, I really appreciate that they didn't, as opposed to trying to hide their mechanical in lots of different places, they made it an architectural element, and they did it thoughtfully, and they used it to kind of make something like lemonade out of lemons with the utility easement. Yeah, I think the only comments I had from a landscape architecture perspective were just some of those plant choices and how they were layered didn't really make sense. But it's not really transparency or a blank wall thing.
Yeah, it's a interesting site, the way that it obviously faces the art museum, and that's the, you know, what you want to be forefront, and then with that weird triangle that CUP is the closest thing to the road and the entrance. But I think they've done a really good job of trying to carry it throughout and make it not just an afterthought.
I would agree. I think the elements in the wall and breaking it up, and I mean, having a formal rhythm that matches the rest of the curtain wall and storefront, that whole system is thoughtful and done nicely. And I kind of like having that, those different kind of open, you know, hard, soft surfaces. I think they interact well together, especially with the way the landscaping and that is working with it. Even the, you know, the different sizes of reveal patterns and stuff. I mean, it's been thoughtfully looked at. So I don't necessarily have a problem with it. Any other thoughts, Commission? Should we look at some findings? The approved alternate meets the intent of the blank wall area regulations. The approved alternate conforms with the comprehensive plan. We can come back to that. The increase in blank wall areas offset by additional architectural treatments and increased vertical landscaping, which I believe it does. The amount of blank wall area for buildings located on urban frontage should not be more than 40%. I think they've offset that. The blank wall intent Blank wall area regulations are intended to prevent large monotonous expanses of undifferentiated building mass. The level of architectural detail should be most intense at the street level where it's within view of the pedestrians, which I think it is. So I think the intent personally has been met.
Yeah, certainly the street level in this sense doesn't totally come into play because it's the CUP is kind of the big blank wall is kind of behind another wall that has a sign on it,
Right.
And so I feel like the human scale at the street really isn't impacted by the way they design this, or is negatively impacted.
I want to throw out a few policies. I think LU 5.1, reinforcing the urban pattern and the surrounding context. LU 7.4, the scale and design of new commercial uses.
UD 5.1 with using plants from the NCMA.
And UD 4.5, they're definitely improving the street environment from what it is today. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to approve.
Second.
Second, Adam. Any discussion? Being none, all in favor? Any opposed? I didn't see Jake. I don't know if he's still on or not. And then Chris is recused. So that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Great project. Look forward to seeing that. That's going to be a great addition to the city of Raleigh.
I'm just curious to see the future phases of it, see it all work in harmony.
I am too. I hope it can be done well with a private investor doing phase 3 of that mixed use kind of development. All right. Well, that now ends our business portion of the meeting. So let's it's 7:52. Let's see if we can get out of here by 8. We'll continue with working group reports. I think all we really have tonight is the Sir Walter Raleigh. And I'm just going to go ahead and turn that over to you, Carter.
Thank you. Yes, you all saw that we extended the deadline from Monday to Friday. Got a line on kind of half a dozen projects I expect to come in or see in. But I will say we are very short in the landscape design category. I think the one that we have in it is more of a fit for community impact. So if there's anything out there that we can, that's good. I know there's some good landscape projects out there. Let us know or let me know. I'll chase it down tomorrow. I got a little time. Or if you want to submit it yourself or get it to the right folks that can. So that's probably the only category that we still kind of have a lacking. So, but helping that 5 p.m. tomorrow is the deadline. So if you've got some projects to submit, please do. Got any questions, just contact me offline. The jury is set to meet virtually on Wednesday. And so we're looking to have the jury packet out probably late tomorrow or this weekend for them people to look at. And then we're just going to be looking at the design of the certificate and working on parallel tracks for an in-person event and potentially, hopefully not, a virtual event. So that's where we're standing right now. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Hey, Carter, we don't have a public art category, do we?
We don't. We've had some that have been submitted that way. We try to find kind of the best fit for it. But if there's an art project out there that you think would be a good design, yeah, let's get it.
I just William Dodge reminded me that we had talked about that last year, but maybe we just never really did anything with that, I guess.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think we have one that's much more of a public art project than an educational in the category that it's in. Again, the jury kind of has the leeway to kind of move things out, create their own But it's definitely something we could think of for future.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Yeah, I would definitely have people submit, even if they don't know. I mean, I think as a jury member, I think we can move things around as needed to fill a category if it fits in a different place a little bit better.
Carter, I should know this, but for landscape projects, do they need to have their full submittal ready to go by 5 p.m. tomorrow, or is it just the application?
Well, we need to have it's a form, web form, so a description, and then we ask for 10 photographs. So I mean, if it's less than 10, it's less than 10, but you know, that's the yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. Is there any other reports that anybody would like to discuss?
I will let you know in terms of the legacy project. I asked the David Moore with the DRA to come back in October just because we knew we were going to have a long agenda. So he's looking to come to the second meeting in October to kind of give us an update and talk about plans for next fiscal this fiscal year, I guess. Yeah.
Well, I hope this virtual platform. It seems like we had more turnout tonight. So I appreciate that. Last time was painful. So, it's hard sitting there for an hour plus and then having to turn people away. So, and then we had to just basically just added it to tonight, which made it a long meeting. So, I'm asking, begging people to please, email me. If you can't make it, if you can make it, if you can't make it, either way, just let us know, let Carter know, so we have a good idea, so we can let, attorneys and stuff know in advance. It's egg on our face when we've got to let them, when we all have to show up and then we can't do anything. So hopefully this virtual environment will take care of some of that until we get this next phase going where we can, do what we've been talking before. That's still moving forward. I think Carter and staff are working on that. So, hopefully by the end of the year, we'll have a resolution of that, but we still have some meetings in the meantime. So let's do our best to communicate and let people know, and we'll move forward the best we can. But I appreciate all you guys hanging out tonight. It's been a long one, but I think, I thought we had some great comments, actually, conversation, and so it was really good. Any other feedback before we adjourn? All right. See you on a couple weeks.
Let's all thank Corey for continuing to be the chair. It's very nice.
Yeah, well, it's getting painful when, it's getting painful. You guys help me out. Help a brother out. Let me know where
Thanks,
you guys
Corey.
are. So
Carter and Aaron, thank you guys for all you do.
Yes.
Thank you all for being here till 8. This is the longest meeting I've been involved in with the commission in the last 6 years. So thank you all.
We appreciate you being here.
I might have to go get Chick-fil-A now.
Right. Unfortunately, they close early now because they don't have staff. They close at 7.
Oh, no.
All right. See y'all.
All right.
Thank you all.
Cook out. See you guys.